It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
You know, yesterday when we were in here, I was freezing. So today I wore one of my favorite zip-up Roots Canada sweatshirts. And it's warm in here today. They've got some sort of Frezzy lights in here. Are we doing an OnlyFans production in here? What's going on with these lighting? The
I think the morning show was in need of lighting because it's too dark when they start the show.
That makes sense. Okay, makes sense. That's a very bright light.
You know, James Boyd, he needs the lighting so people can see his beauty.
That's right.
A real diva, James Boyd.
Yeah, Kevin, when I did the morning show with him, little fun fact, 4 out of the 5 days of the week, no shower pre-show.
For you or Kevin?
Huh?
For you or Kevin?
Kevin. Oh, listen, I'm dapper and gelled up and cologned up all the time. But I came in, it's a little bit warm. So, Eddie, since I got clearance from you yesterday, here we go. Now, you got to admit, this shirt is 70% rooted in simply the nostalgia of I love the color scheme and everything else. But I am kind of pulling for him, but it's not like I'm some huge fan. But what do you think of the shirt?
Well, didn't I buy that shirt for you?
No, you got me the one with the Kingdom on it, which will probably make an appearance either I'm off tomorrow, so next week it'll make an appearance.
You're off tomorrow.
I am. I just decided, you know what? Greg Rakestraw will be doing this program tomorrow. I'll be sleeping in and running errands. But I guess we are under Snowmageddon Death Storm 2026, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
When does this take place?
I believe snow is supposed to start falling Saturday night.
Okay.
And then Sunday it's supposed to get bad.
So Sean Ash from WTHR is going to join us at 1:15. He can fill us in on that. There is plenty to talk about, which is a funny thing because this time of year, typically, it is right after the Super Bowl. I think that, after the Super Bowl, when you go from there into the Combine is when you hit that streak where you're more talking about things that have happened as opposed to things that are happening or things that you anticipate that are down the road. And it feels kind of like we're there now because you had this high that we've all been riding of the Indiana football story, and then in addition to that, the coming off of the end of the Colts season and the way that went down. I mean, I don't have to rehash for everybody what the storylines have been. And I was thinking about this yesterday, and I know that this is not, look, there's a lot to talk about. The Pacers last night in action in Boston. You obviously had, the Purdue discussion we can have about the Big Ten and UCLA, and I'm not worried about the fact that Purdue lost their second game. It is actually fairly remarkable when you look and you think, oh, Purdue lost, like, whoa, what in the world? And then you look at it and say, it's their second loss of the year. I mean, it's impossible to think that they're going to go, win out their last 25 games. I guess it's possible, but nonetheless, we have discussed them. We will continue to do so. I do believe, and I'm prepared to say it right now in this, what is today, January 22nd? Is that right? On this, the 22nd of January, I'm prepared to say on air, on record, that I believe Purdue will be in the Final Four in Indianapolis. Now, there are a million things that can go right or go wrong. Make your St. Mary's jokes or, Little Rock jokes all you want. The NCAA tournament, to some extent, is a crapshoot. But because it's a crapshoot, you go with the law of averages of the team that you simply say they are one of the best teams. They're one of the most balanced teams. They can win multiple ways. Purdue is those things. So I do believe that Purdue will be, and they will continue to be, a big, big topic for us. There's obviously the storyline of the NFL, and then Saturday, and this is the big one to me that is the last question mark regarding this particular season of Indiana football. There are two things about this year of Indiana football that jump out in terms of burning questions. The first one is this. Several people have asked me this. Are they the 2025 or 2026 national champions? I'm with people on this. I find this the most confusing thing ever. They are the 2025 college football national champions, which feels weird, though, because they won their most impactful games, the last 3 of them, in 2026.
They are the 2025-2026 college football champs.
Okay.
And the next year would be the 2026-2027.
I get it, but the trophy itself, I believe, just says 2025, does it not?
I don't know. I have not seen an up-close picture of the said trophy.
Like if you list the seasons, like if you had a list of college football national champions, it will go down by record as the 2025 national champions, correct? I mean, I agree with you. 25-26 is the easier way to say it.
Yeah, and if you go on ESPN, for example, and you just look at the IU football schedule, it just says 2025. It doesn't say 26
Correct.
on there.
Like when they won the national title in basketball in 87, it was the 86-87 national I mean, they're the 1987 national champions, but it was the 86-87 season. A little bit different, though, because literally the year is half and half in terms of when you play it. But that's one of the questions about Indiana football, for example. The other is that I'm wondering about, and I get it, it'll be packed. It'll be packed. But this, especially when you're talking about this Snowmageddon Death Storm 2026 that's going to happen this weekend, what does that mean for people that want to go and do the celebration at Memorial Stadium? I don't think they're doing a parade, right? They're just doing a celebration with the trophy presentation at Memorial Stadium. But with that, if it's 5 degrees outside, I mean, are we at the point where you'd contemplate, and would people do this? Would you rather, I'm curious of this, people can send me either via text to our text line, which I now got going at 239-1070, or on my phone at 523-9288. Yes, Eddie.
Jake Query has figured out how to log back into his text Groove account so he can communicate with you now via 317-239-1070.
It took a while. I had to do a couple of those Octave Verify things.
Oh, yeah.
But people can send me their answer on this. Would you rather wait outside in 5-degree weather, go in and sit in the stadium for 30 minutes to watch the trophy presentation or whatever, in the snow, in the cold, in potentially sub-zero temperatures with wind chill? Or would you do it if they said, you know what, we can't get 50,000 people into Assembly Hall, so we are going to do 3 different presentations at Assembly Hall? One at, say, 11 a.m., one at 2 p.m., and one at 5 p.m. to give people time to get in and get out. And then you have 50+ thousand people that can enjoy it that way, inside, indoors, in warmth. Which way would you rather have it? I'm going to guess that most people would say, I'll brave the elements and sit outside and wait outside and freeze. I'm going to guess most people say that. But I personally, I'm old enough now, I'm like, I think I'd go inside. Don Fisher, Jake, announced them as the 2026 national champions when the game was over. The NCAA lists it as the 2025 NCAA champion. I think both are right. I'm not saying Don was wrong. I get it. But anyway, here is the big question. Where do we go from here? I don't mean in terms of topic of conversation on this radio program. I don't mean in terms of, gosh, Indiana won the national championship. Fans loved going to the Rose Bowl. Fans loved going to the Peach Bowl. Fans loved going to Miami. Are they going to do that all over again? If next year it happens again where Indiana is a number 1 seed and they have to go to the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, and then if they win that, they go to the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, and then if they win that, they go to the national championship game. Where is the national championship game played next year, Eddie?
Viva Las Vegas.
Okay, then you go to Vegas. Are Indiana fans all in on doing all three over again, or do you get to the point of, man, that's a lot of money, and I did all this last year?
Well, see, here's the thing. If you think they're going to get there, Jake, go ahead and book it now. It was only like $150. One of my friends did it already.
It's a good point. That's smart. If it's a refundable flight in particular. But yesterday, I was at the gym. And by the way, I did two things yesterday as it relates to that. I was in the gym, but also before that, I got a chance to go through and really look at Game Day Men's Health and the clinic they have. They have several of them throughout Central Indiana, but I went to the one up in Carmel and got a tour through of the way that they're doing everything in terms of their testosterone therapies, in terms of their peptide therapies and the different things they have. Fabulous facility. Great folks. Really impressive. Really impressive with the clinicians on staff right there. Very cool place, and thrilled to be working with them and to be able to see that. I appreciated their hospitality yesterday. So I went through and saw all of that and then went from there to the gym. And the first person I see at the gym goes, hey, quick question. And this, I think, is a real interesting point. He said, where do we go from here in college football and college basketball in the NIL transfer portal world, which is where we are? And I got to thinking about it, and I thought a lot about it. And I know that I've mentioned like the little, mini dynasties and that kind of thing into how this can all work out. But one of the things that I found the most fascinating is when you think about when this all first came down the slide and when it was all around the corner in terms of now players can get paid for their name, for their image, and for their likeness. And the thought amongst most was, you know what? The rich are about to get richer. Everybody thought that. Man, if you thought that Ohio State and Florida and Alabama and Texas had an advantage before, then just wait until you see what happens now that they can legally pay players. The rich are about to get way richer. And I thought that as well. I thought, the Indiana fans think they know what tailgating's about. Indiana fans think they know football. They got no clue of what it is that this is about, the world they're about to enter into. They've got no clue the world they're about to enter into. And you heard everybody. Paul Feinbaum would be the king of this, of, Indiana is this Cinderella, like almost fake story. And Indiana, every time that Indiana made a move, every time that Indiana took a step forward, every time that something happened with Indiana, the thought was, this is short-lived. This is all just a blip. This is all just wait. And then you take a step back and you say, you know what? Did Indiana go out and buy a roster? Did Indiana go out and spend as much money as everybody else on a roster? Maybe. But what Indiana did was Indiana was ahead of everybody else. And you've heard me talk about this. There's NIL Collective. There's booster money. All of that. And Indiana was ahead of the curve of figuring out how to create their own collective war chest and get boosters involved, but also really brilliantly figuring out where they want to spend their money. And that's the difference. Paul Feinbaum and diehard Auburn fans, diehard Alabama fans, diehard Texas fans, they assumed that they would dominate now because they would be able to go out, mass spend, outspend everyone, and put together the best roster. And what they didn't account for was this: preparation, expertise, body language. Indiana didn't just go out with a blank check and say, you get a contract and you get a contract and you get a contract. Indiana, with Curt Cignetti, looked at film exhaustively. He brought with him players from James Madison that came to Bloomington from James Madison and were able to say, hey, listen, this is how he does things. This is the method. Follow our lead. And the players that were in Bloomington that were already IU players, Omar Cooper and others, were able to say, okay, in line, and I will trust what you're telling me. And Indiana put together a roster that was players that were exactly what Curt Cignetti wanted. He didn't just go out and mass buy. Clemson does that. Clemson goes out and just says, this guy's a 5-star, this guy's a 5-star, this guy's a 5-star, bring him on. As a Clemson fan, I can't tell you the number of times that I've sat in the stands at Clemson Memorial Stadium and had people say, why is so-and-so not on the field? They're a 5-star recruit. Or that guy, they keep throwing him the ball and he keeps dropping it, but he's a 5-star recruit. You know who was a big-time recruit at Clemson? E.J. Williams, that's at Indiana and is like their 4th receiver. He was a 4-star recruit, top 100 player, went to Clemson. Everybody's like, well, hand him the keys. It's about understanding. It's about more than just buying things. It's about spending your money wisely to get the pieces. Yes, you spend a lot on your quarterback in Fernando Mendoza, but you have complementary pieces that work perfectly together, and they follow your lead. They follow your expertise. They fall in line, and they also are the product of being there and the fact that Curt Cignetti, in scouting every player that ends up playing for Indiana, looks at body language. How does a guy interact on the sidelines? How does a guy react after a bad play? It's one thing to hand the ball to the official after a good play. It's another to be able to put your helmet back on, be a professional, not sulk, and perform after a bad play. And Indiana went out and said, you guys can spend money all you want following and chasing nothing but stars or portal all-stars or whatever it might be. We're going to go out and get players that buy into what it is that we want and align with what it is that we want. And body language can tell us a lot about that. Indiana this year, there is no coincidence in this. Indiana did not lose a fumble in their last 15 games of the year. In their last 15 games of the year, Indiana did not lose a fumble. Indiana did not turn the ball over in the college football playoff. Didn't turn it over. Their discipline is one thing. Their resolve was another, because if they didn't have a good play, if Mendoza got blown up, if they had a drop pass, didn't happen a lot, happened to Surratt a couple times. If those things happen, what is the body language that tells you how to come back? And that comes down to not mass spending. And yes, Indiana is entering into a category here where they're about to match and perhaps even surpass the big boys in terms of what they spend. But the mentality has always been for the SEC and other schools that have been doing this forever, just writing a check and expecting results. That's how the SEC's been doing it forever. That's what Paul Feinbaum is used to. He's under the assumption that writing the big check just automatically means production. What he didn't account for was the fact that there was a system that you were bringing players into, and you were saying, you'll get your money so long as you're willing to buy into our system. And I'll give Paul Feinbaum this. He has doubted Curt Cignetti from day one. He has damned Indiana from day one. He has downplayed the Hoosiers from day one. And now that they are the undisputed, undefeated, 16-0, nearly perfect in the form of the way they play, national champion, Paul Feinbaum yesterday sat down. I don't know if he went to Bojangles to make sure that it had the right spice on it. I don't know if he went to Crystal Burger to have something to wash it down with. I don't know if he went up to Leeds, Alabama, to one of the barbecue joints to put barbecue on it. But he had a huge plate of crow, and I'll give Paul Feinbaum credit. He finally saw the light and gave Indiana their flowers.
The debate on whether Indiana had the best season in college football history, but there can be no debate. It is the greatest story in the history of the game. And what made it even more amazing is how people misunderstood what Kurt Signetti was doing in Bloomington. But let me assure you, nobody was more incorrect in understanding that process than me. Almost everything I said throughout the season about him and about Indiana was wrong, and it was an epic failure on my part. There was no question Indiana was the best team, and yes, the Big Ten is the best conference in the country. We congratulate Coach Signetti, Indiana, and the Big Ten for an extraordinary run.
I have no idea if he wrote that himself. I don't know that I necessarily care. What I find interesting, and I give him credit, it's a very professional move there to say I was wrong. I give him credit, however, when he says people misunderstood. What he meant by that was I misunderstood. I meaning Paul Feinbaum. But what it comes down to is this. We are right now witnessing before our very eyes the transfer into legality of what many programs have been doing forever. And because it is now within the bounds of legality, it essentially means that any program that so chooses can go out and, if they're smart about it, can build themselves a winner. And that's what Indiana did. They were smart about it. The first time that I drove to Montana, I was super excited about it because in Montana, all I ever heard was there's no speed limit. Wild, Wild West, no speed limit. Montana and the interstates of Montana are almost identical to the state of college football as we know it today. There's no speed limit. But when you get to Montana and you're ready to just throw down the gauntlet and hit the open roads, like you had just done illegally driving through the Dakotas to get there. But now all of a sudden it's different because it's legal. There's no speed limit. There's no rules. Let it fly. And you're super excited about it. You're Alabama or you're Ohio State or you're Texas, and you're saying, there's no rules now, baby. We just got to continue doing what we just did all the way through the Dakotas. We just don't have to look over our back anymore. We don't have to have the fuzzbuster on. Let it ride. And then the first sign you see in Montana says speed limit, reasonable and prudent. Reasonable and prudent. Whatever you feel is appropriate. You govern yourself. And then you realize, gosh, there's a lot of curves. There's a lot of hills. There's a lot of treacherous conditions to navigate in driving in Montana. So be reasonable and prudent as to when you decide to hit the accelerator and when you decide to pay attention to the road. And Indiana, masterfully, because they've had to do it for a long time, and Kurt Signetti, masterfully, because he's had to do it for a long time, at James Madison and at Indiana of Pennsylvania. In those schools, Kurt Signetti had to keep his eye on the road because he was not in the Wild, Wild West. He was having to make sure, because he was driving and navigating roads that were going up and down and around mountains and through snowstorms, he was making sure that he was driving in a way that had precision. And once you learn how to drive with precision, then you get back on that open road, and reasonable and prudent, that was for the last stretch of the road. Now it's the Wild, Wild West. There's no speed limit. Let it fly. And that's exactly what Indiana did. They had the combination of the two things. But where do we go from here? We'll get more into that in terms of how eventually you're going to have to police in some way, shape, or form, because what Indiana did was fabulous, but at the same time, you wonder then, are we now entering into simply one-year free agency through college and et cetera? And then how does that? The rich will be good for a year or two, but are we going to have this oscillation of the rich all over the place? Now, another program that has started to tick it up a little bit, and I don't think that we've given it, I'm guilty as charged. I'll be Paul Feinbaum here. I will eat my crow. We have not talked enough about it, is Butler basketball. I think Butler's an intriguing story this year. They have a lot of new faces. They're playing well. They've had a couple nice wins lately. And Nick Gardner's on their radio broadcast and joins us next. Hey there, Jake Query for Game Day Men's Health. I love talking to the kids from the IHSAA, by the way. Sometimes I think to myself, man, what it must be like to feel 18 again. And you just heard me mention it. Game Day Men's Health, I went through yesterday, walked through, and was talking to them. They are fabulous folks, and I love the fact that they've got a number of clinics right here in the Indy metro area. Avon, Carmel, Fishers, Greenwood. We're talking about testosterone replacement therapies. We're talking about peptides. Peptides are fabulous. There's a lot of cardiovascular benefit research that says that that's good, and just in your recovery time as well. But simply helping you guys get back in the game at Game Day Men's Health. Getting back in the game where you just want to feel that younger self again. You know, you're tired of those 3 o'clock in the afternoon naps. You want to feel a little more energy. You want to be able to work out or have your physical goals and at the same time feel that recovery where you're just not getting the aches and pains after the fact. That's what Game Day Men's Health is there to help with. It is an awesome clinic in terms of going in. Great folks. It is efficient. You're in and out in under an hour at the most. Game Day Men's Health to help you get back in the game, level up, and get healthier. Reclaim your game. Make a consultation. Find out more. Again, their clinic locations in Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood. See it all at GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Butler's won 2 in a row, and I think impressive. Now, the question becomes, is this simply a matter of a matchup that fell their way, or, you know, when you're standing at 3-5 in conference play and 12-7 overall, Butler probably still finds themselves on the outside looking in. But are they playing themselves into, is this, in fact, maybe they found something out, or is this just kind of the way the ball bounced for them? To join us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, javahouse.com is the website. Peel and Pour, you get your Colombian amazingly smooth coffee, you get the Wrangler Energy, also the Liquid Science hydration beverage, all easy to get at javahouse.com. Use the code JAKE25 for 25% off. Nick Gardner is on the Butler Basketball Radio Network, joins us on the program. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jake. How are you doing today?
You know what? For some odd reason, since you asked, Nick, I've got some sort of I feel like, I don't feel it, but I sound like I think I have a head cold. I don't, though. But I do think, if you really want to know the truth how I'm doing, I feel today audibly sexy. So is that an uncomfortable answer for you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all, Jake. I know the feeling. I know the feeling well.
We're just a couple of audibly sexy guys, right? Let's just get ourselves a couple bullhorns and start walking around the circle, shall we? Hey, let's talk about this, Nick. And you heard what I just mentioned. You know, Butler is a team that I think that going into it, there was a lot of question mark, and that always happens when you have a new roster. And you played the game, you played at Butler. Sometimes it takes teams longer to figure themselves out than others. Have we seen a corner kind of being turned here, or is this maybe just like benefit of a couple of matchups that fell their way?
I think probably it's a little bit of both, Jake. I think, first of all, you got to take into account, Jalen Jackson going down really changed things. That was going to be your lead guard. With him going down, it just changed things. And so I think after you kind of found a rhythm early in the year, he goes down. It took some time here to get back up to speed a little bit. Look, part of that is just new roles, new rotations. You're obviously inserting a freshman in Xavier Robinson in for Jalen, so you knew there were going to be some bumps in the road. I think part of it, too, is you look at the schedule, Jake. The start of the Big East slate was brutal. When you start, you got to go to UConn early, you're at Creighton early, then you have Villanova, St. John's. And so I think it was more, to me, it's more getting back to what was successful early with a little different lineup and different looks of those lineups. But there was just, a tough schedule, and you didn't play up to par, but now it feels like you're getting back up there, and certainly the schedule has opened up a bit, but you still got to take care of business, and the Dogs have done an excellent job of that over the last couple of games.
Yeah, I think it's an impressive bounce back because, as you talked about, you lose 4 straight, right? And Nick, I mean, you played the game. Like, a lot of times you can start to the same holds true with doing radio. You do a couple good shows in a row, and you think to yourself, like, man, we're really rolling along here. And then you do a couple that just feel stagnant, and you can get caught up in that. And you can start to believe in that. Is there anything that had jumped out at you in winning these back-to-back games after the 4-game streak that you felt like was kind of a mental turning point for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mentioned, losing at Creighton, losing to Villanova and St. John's. Certainly there were some second halves that you wanted to have back, but man, there's a lot of teams in the Big East that are going to walk out of those games scratching their heads. And so I think, to me, the difference was that game at Xavier last week, that was really out of character, you would say. Like, talking to coaches, to Coach Mata, that was one where they felt like they didn't perform up to par, and that was the first one where you thought, man, that just wasn't up to the standard. And so after, coming off of that effort, and then you're staring at going to Seton Hall, one of the toughest teams in the league, a rugged group. You had to answer the bell last Saturday. To me, the growth was shown in being able to get back that competitive edge, that urgency, that toughness that you needed to win games and win possessions in the Big East, and to do it against the Seton Hall Pirates, who are one of the toughest, more rugged physical teams in the league. You had to answer the bell. The Dogs did, and hopefully they understand. I think when the defensive pressure is up, when they're engaged and energetic and flying around defensively, that shows me that they're engaged in the game, and that's what you've seen over the last couple of games. And when they've made their surges, that defense has created some offense, and then it just amplifies throughout the squad.
You mentioned having to kind of not re-identify themselves, but maybe reprioritize offensively just where they go. Mm-hmm. What has jumped out at you, Nick, about the play of Finley Bizjack and just what he's been able to do to maybe kind of emerge as the guy that is one of their, if not the guy that you're counting on night in, night out?
I think first and foremost, his game has just matured. And by that, I mean, there were times, look, he's a scorer. He is wired to score, and he has to be that way for this group. But you still got to make sure you're taking those things within the offense. You're being aggressive at the right times. And I just think he's been very mature about when to attack, when to really maybe force some things because he has to. He does an excellent job of getting to the line. I've just been really impressed with his decision-making. And, Coach Mata and he have both talked about how the game has kind of slowed down for him. And the other thing he's doing, he's making plays for teammates a lot. With more attention, you're going to draw more attention from defenses, and you can find some teammates. I think he and Stink Robinson in the backcourt have really found their niches a little bit. I think Xavier's done a great job over the last 2 contests as well. It feels like the game has slowed down for him as well. He's scored more. He's earned more time on the court, and he's just looked more in control of the offense. And I think you can see the proof's in the pudding with the results you've seen.
Nick Gardner is my guest, Java House Peel and Pork guest line where you are hearing him. He, of course, color analyst for the Butler Basketball Radio Network. Nick, in your opinion, and maybe this is different from team to team, but which do you think is more difficult? If you were a coach, okay, so Nick Gardner is the coach of, we'll say that we're just going to put you in charge of Butler, right? You're the Butler coach. Which is more difficult? When your team is rolling along and the wins are rolling in and everything's clicking on all cylinders, is it more difficult to keep a team like that on focus of the task at hand and not get too high about what's going on and not take for granted that you still got to stay on task? Or is it more difficult when you do go through a skid to convince your group that if they stay on task, that the wins eventually will come? Which one is the harder job to keep a team from, in terms of their thought process?
I'm of the opinion, I think human nature, and a lot of times it's harder with success to stay with the details and the things that led to those success. To me, like that's a lot of the challenges these coaches have, Jake, is, look, we can dissect how you're guarding an on-ball screen and what defenses you're going to run and what pace you want to play. But the real challenge is getting those guys to be at full focus and having the right mindset, 32 nights a year, night in, night out, no matter what's going on in their lives, at school, whatever it may be. And I think when you're having success and people are patting you on the back and doing all types of things, human nature is to relax and relent and maybe cut some corners here and there because you've had that success. Look, when you have a group of competitors that want to win and they've gone through a 3-game losing streak or a 4-game losing streak, those guys are going to be dialed in. They want to turn that thing around. That human nature for them is to really dive in and get more focused. I think when you're up flying high is where it's most difficult. And that's where, the great coaches really separate themselves. When everybody else is praising your team and telling them how good you are, you're pointing out the things that you need to improve on, because there are always things like that. So to me, that's the challenge coaches face. How do you get your guys to be ready 32 nights a year? And when you're flying high, it can be more difficult because things have come easy for them.
Nick, you have had a chance to, throughout, obviously doing the games this year, play throughout the Big East beyond just Butler. I want to ask you about a couple local stories and just your overall impression of them, okay? First, I realize you probably have only seen them once, but I'm going to guess that you pay attention outside of just when they're playing Butler. Your thoughts on the reigning Mr. Basketball, Braylon Mullins, in the year that he's had at UConn, and I know he started out, injured, and then the minutes started coming.
He's as good as advertised, if not better, Jake. I think, the most telling thing for me is, guys can go out and produce and they have to kind of go get theirs, right? It's not like they're running sets for them or running offense through them. Danny Hurley's running stuff through Braylon Mullins, and he's doing it late in games, and Braylon Mullins is making shots. And hearing the comments from Coach Hurley, he absolutely loves coaching him. So, he is a problem. He's probably, played himself into one and done territory with the way he's been able to shoot the basketball and be a playmaker. He is an elite player. Okay.
Secondly, a guy that I really like, and I didn't know him a lot, but when I did, I really enjoyed him. And that's Chris Holtmann, who's now at DePaul, who Butler just saw. And he, is getting good play from C.J. Gunn from Indianapolis, the IU transfer. Your assessment and the job for both of those guys.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what, C.J. Gunn has been really good. He came out on fire against the Dogs the other night. And Butler, really the key to the game was slowing him down and not letting him get clean looks. Look, he's a guy that if C.J. Gunn gets a clean look early, it can be trouble, right? Because if he makes a couple, he can get going. He can score in bunches. And thoroughly impressed with the job that Chris Holtmann has done at DePaul. In preparing for the game earlier this week, so many of those game notes were, hey, DePaul has won a 3-game. They have a 3-game winning streak at home in the Big East for the first time since 2007. And they've done this for the first time since 2006 or 2007. So he is really building things. And one thing about Chris Holtmann's group is they're going to guard you. They're going to play with an edge. They're going to play with that sense of urgency, and you're going to have to earn everything from them. So, that's what makes this league so tough is night in and night. And people think, oh, DePaul, you still got to go play those guys. And Chris Holtman has got that thing rolling right now. And so it's been fun to watch them get better, but it's certainly challenging as a Butler guy because that used to be a little blip on the radar on the schedule, but now it's something you got to make sure you're ready for because it's going to be a grinded out type of game. They're very similar to Seton Hall and how well they guard. And that's why I was so impressed with the Dogs' offense. To be able to score 87 and get that win was big for the Dogs at Hinkle on Tuesday.
I really do think Audibly Sexy has a good ring to it. Your thoughts on that? I really do.
I mean, that's a good band name, Jake.
Yeah.
That could be a good band name right there, right?
So if we're in the band, let's say the band is Nick, you, me, and then we'll throw Eddie into the equation here. Okay, what part of the band are you in this 3-piece band? Who are you?
Oh man, that's a great. I mean, I guess I'll nominate myself for lead singer. If somebody's got to do it, Jake, I can do that, and maybe I can pound on the bass or something a little bit.
Okay, so Eddie, what would you be? I know exactly what you are, Eddie, but go ahead.
I'm not sure what I would be, but I know for sure that our promoter is definitely Nick Gardner's partner, Mark Minner.
Okay, that's fair. Get Mark to promote us, right? Eddie, you're the drummer, right?
Okay, sounds good. I'll
the guy
take
that you know what I mean? Like people think that like they take it for granted. They think anybody can do it, and then they're like, you know what? He's a pretty good drummer. But you know the last now, Nick, Eddie, you guys know the last thing a drummer says in a band, right?
What's that?
Hey guys, let's start doing some of my music. Once that happens, it's like, hey, let's send out some flyers on the strip looking for a drummer. But Eddie, you kind of look like the Catman from Kiss. So I'm going to say you're the drummer.
I don't know if that's a compliment, but I'll take it as a compliment.
I'll be Gene Simmons because I'll just stand here. We'll let Nick go ahead and even though Gene Simmons is a bass guy, we'll let Nick be the lead singer. I'm just going to sit down here and lick my eyebrows, right? And see where things fall.
And just be audibly sexy over there.
Just be audibly sexy. That's right. All right, Nick, appreciate the time as always.
Likewise. Pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me on, Jake.
All right, Nick Gardner from Butler Basketball. Listen, Chris Holtman, he mentioned that about DePaul. One of the burning questions I always had was just how DePaul, which was such a dominant program for a long time. I know they never won a title, but Ray Meyer's ability to just get Chicago guys to go there and then his son, and they had it rolling for so long. That is one that I'm like, how in the world is DePaul basketball not back to where it was?
You know how there's doppelgangers out there? Like you look like a celebrity or you look like somebody.
Yep.
What is the audio term for that?
That's a very good question.
Because if I put Nick Gardner.
Dolby Ganger.
Okay, good.
A Dolby Ganger. Is that what it is?
That's a good one.
Okay.
If I put Nick Gardner and Ted Karras Jr. on the line at the same time, would we know which one is which?
Boy, that's a good call there. You know who Mark Malone is?
No.
Former NFL quarterback, kind of a journeyman quarterback, but his best years were in Pittsburgh. And he is or at least was for years, one of the analysts on Westwood One Radio. So he might have done like some games with Kevin Harlan, that kind of thing. And every time that he would do a game, I would get a message on my phone of people like, are you doing the game on whatever station between the Chiefs and, the Texans or whatever? And I will admit, I heard it one time and was like, whoa, that is a little something, right?
Was it audibly sexy?
I'm not going to lie to you. It's a little bit, no. But it was weird. It was definitely weird. By the way, speaking of, I mentioned Chiefs broadcast. Did you say that our old pal Jimmy Cook's going to join the program today?
Yes. Yes.
Now that the Chiefs aren't in the playoffs,
minutes.
He's got all kinds of time, right?
45 minutes from now.
Jimmy's return coming up bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. Hey there, Jake Query for Chicago's Pizza. 18 Central Indiana locations, over 20 of them statewide. Matter of fact, new one down in Martinsville for Chicago's Pizza. ChicagosPizza.com is the website where you can see all of those locations. And you have, right now, perfect timing. Perfect timing, Jake, because folks still have 45 minutes to get in for their fabulous lunch buffet. I'm talking about you get the traditional pizza, you get right there the deep dish pizza, also the salad bar with all the fixings, all the dressings, and a soft drink. With tax, $13 out the door, which is a value at twice the price. Speaking of that, twice the price of that is still even more than you would pay for the family meal deal, just $25. Perfect. Why not make Friday night pizza night, tomorrow night or tonight, or every night pizza night? Chicago's Pizza, committed to the community and giving back to Indiana. Those are some of the things we're going to be talking about with Chicago's Pizza over the course of the year. I love them. They're great folks, and the pizza's even better. ChicagosPizza.com.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Sean Ash coming up 1:15 from WTHR. We're going to find out about Snowmageddon Death Storm 26. 19 feet of snow supposed to come on Sunday. Is that right, Eddie?
19 feet?
You know what I always say? And these, listen, more often than not, I mock it a lot, but it is remarkable to me sometimes where they'll say, hey, there's a storm and it's going to start getting bad at, 10 after or whatever. 1 o'clock on Sunday is when the snow, and literally you look up and it's like 12:58 and here comes a flake and you're like, holy cow. The timing sometimes, more importantly, when they say like, hey, I know it's bad right now, but don't worry, on Wednesday there's going to be some reprieve and it'll be up to 40. And then on Wednesday it's nice out. And you're like, how do they know that 3 days out? And I know that it's the easy target to make fun of, I wish I was a weather guy. You're wrong 50% of the time. But I think it's going to be an interesting weekend, and so Sean's going to come on to talk about that. I don't know that we'll ever again see the blizzard of 78 because we got a little more preparation now than we did back then. And people all rush to the grocery store to – I go back to my rant that I always give. I understand, people have – children and elderly people. I get all that. But even if you get really bad winter conditions, are you really going to be stuck inside your house for more than 18 hours? And you could literally come tomorrow and vacuum seal my residence without me knowing it and not let me out. And I've never cooked a meal in my life. And I probably have enough grazing food in there to get me by for 3 days and be totally fine. I mean, yeah, one lunch might be a peanut butter sandwich, but whatever, right?
And Boo's cat food. By the way, how is Boo?
Oh, he's fabulous. Boo's great. Now, I'll take tips for this from anybody, though. Boo, which is my cat, for those that don't know, Boo has figured out what the cat carrier means, and I've had to cancel the last 2 vet visits because it's just me in there, right? And getting Boo, Eddie, have you ever tried to get a cat into a cat carrier that doesn't want to get in there?
Yes.
It's impossible. Their ability to, he's like Barry Sanders. It's incredible. Congratulations, by the way, the 30th Indiana Sports Writers and Sportscasters Association Hall of Fame class has been announced. Several writers from towns around Indiana, but among those being inducted this year, Terry Hutchins, a posthumous award, not unfortunately that he is honored because that is well worth it. But Terry Hutchins, who was a longtime Indiana basketball and football writer for the Star before going on, initially he was in Fort Wayne, then the Star. He's a native of California and worked for a network of newspapers throughout Indiana while also writing several books about Indiana athletics. But Terry Hutchins, a tremendous honor for Hutch, and certainly pleased to see that he is one of those that is in. Rick Morwick, who is from Franklin, writes for the Johnson County Daily Journal. Congratulations to him. Jim Russell from the Indianapolis News, congratulations. Rob Blackman, who you hear on this program from Purdue Sports, is getting the Marv Bates Sportscaster of the Year award. I think that was previously announced. And Vince Welch, very well deserved from ABC, Fox, and WIBC. Vince, I used to always say to Vince Welch that I was always happy for his success because each time that he got a job and would move up the ladder, seemingly I got hired to replace him. So it was always awesome, right? But Vince, let me tell you something about Vince Welch.
His son doing a great job as well.
Yeah, Dylan does a great job. When I was in high school and I did radio, as everybody knows, with Adam Alexander, and then Mac Engel did football with me, and we were at WJEL, the North Central Station, and David Woods, who works here with us at Urban One and is a videographer and editor for the Telemundo and television broadcast side of things, was in our class. We had a great class, and I mean, of really good kids, I mean. And whenever any local television person would come to do a story on North Central, to cover a game, Friday Night Football, whatever it might be, we would always go up and bend the ear of those folks and ask what advice they had and could we shadow them and, et cetera, et cetera. And I was already, kind of under the wing of Ed Sorensen at that point and had been since I was in the 6th grade. But Vince was really good to Adam Alexander. And Adam just loved and thought the world of Vince Welch. I think thought of him professionally as like a father figure type thing, even though Adam and his dad are very close. But also just I think they were friends. But in addition to that, the thing about Vince that I think Adam really has carried with him to this day is Vince was just so kind and always has been such just a pillar of a person. And Adam never forgot about how kind Vince was and open-doored with him to all of us. Hey, anything you guys need and whatever else, and a tremendous broadcaster, that goes without saying. But the best thing I can say about Vince is Vince Welch literally is today the exact same guy that he was back then when he was like the number 3 guy at Channel 8. Literally the exact same guy. And it goes without saying, a legendary and now Hall of Fame career. All right, we'll get back into talking a little college football and the landscape of things, and Sean Ash coming up in about 15. Hey there, Jake Query for Game Day Men's Health. Think about this, guys. You've been thinking to yourself, I want to get back in the game. It's a new year. I want to feel healthier. I want to get back into the gym, whatever it might be. Just get a little more energy. Whenever you watch a game, it's always enjoyable to watch a sporting event and say, boy, those guys they're just running this thing like a clinic. And that's exactly what you get from Game Day Men's Health, because it has the fun and the feel of a sport atmosphere, but at the same time, it is still a clinic, and it is a clinic dedicated with all of their clinics right here in the Indy metro area, Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood. Game Day Men's Health wants to get you back in the game, and they do it with precision like you get when you watch a team that's running like a clinic. But a fun, laid-back atmosphere. You go in just about an hour or so. You can go in, get your testosterone levels checked, and whether it's testosterone therapy that's best for you, peptide therapy in terms of recovery that's best for you, all of it covered in terms of Game Day Men's Health for those of you that just simply want to get back in the game. I love it. I was over there yesterday. Great folks and certainly efficient in what it is that they do, but doing it custom made with a game plan for you. Game Day Men's Health. Find them online, find a consultation, find the therapy best for you. GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I love this song. Love it. This song, it's hard to believe. It is hard to believe that song's like 40 years old. Because does this song to you, Eddie, sound ancient, or does it sound like it's just something that you would hear and you're like, yeah, I've just kind of always known it in the soundtrack of my life?
It's in that latter part.
Yeah. It's just a
Sounds
good song.
current.
It's a good tune, right?
Yeah.
40 years old. But things change. Father Time's undefeated, and that includes in college athletics. Couple of coaches that we have become very familiar with, it goes without saying, that are almost household names in the world of college athletics. We talked earlier about college football, and just with the NIL and the portal, I don't know exactly where the answer lies, especially on the football side of things. And all of this is also confused by the fact that you have the COVID year in there for players, so they get the extra year back, which at the time I totally understood it. But now you get guys like Carson Beck that are, they're 6-7 years in. It's like, good Lord.
6'7". 6'7".
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I should have thought about that when I said it. And it is a fascinating dynamic when you have players that are opting to stay in school as opposed to go pro because they're going to make more money in college, right? At least in the immediacy. From a football standpoint, you would think, and what's also intriguing is it seems as though those that now suddenly are the ones most in dire need, jumping up and down about reform or regulation for all of this, are those that we thought were going to be the ones with the inherent advantage. Ohio State suddenly is like rolling their eyes and upset with the way Indiana bought a roster. Clemson fans are upset because of the way Indiana or Texas Tech took advantage of the transfer portal. And the schools that we thought were going to be the rich getting richer are actually the ones that are kind of stuck in status quo, while others, because they've always had to work a little harder, saw an opportunity and took advantage of it. And schools are now able to do legally what a lot of programs were doing illegally forever. And on the college basketball side of things, a little bit different, shorter number of players. You're wondering now that you're starting to get these players in this gray area of G League players or players that were drafted in the NBA but have yet to sign a contract and are now dipping down and taking college eligibility and all of those things. It also muddies the water for college basketball. Two coaches, well known around the game, have touched on and spoken about this in the last few days. One of them is the coach that probably is most synonymous with success over the last several years. John Calipari is at Arkansas and had the following to say about the state of things as it stands right now.
You got 5 years to play 4. If you stay at the same school 4 years, we'll give you a 5th year. If your coach leaves or is fired, you can transfer without penalty. You can do it once, and if the coach is fired or leaves, you could end up doing it twice. But after that, you got to sit out. You can transfer, but you got to sit out. Does anybody care what this is doing for 17 and 18-year-old American kids? Do you know what this opportunity has done for them and their families? There aren't going to be any high school kids. Who, other than dumb people like me, are going to recruit high school kids? I get so much satisfaction out of coaching young kids and seeing them grow and make it and their family life changes that I'm going to keep doing it. But why would anybody else, if you can get NBA players, G League players, guys that are 28 years old, guys from Europe, do we really know their transcript? Do we have somebody over there? Do we really know their birth certificate? Or don't we? And then, there's no... Look, Tommy Izzo, Mark Few, there are a bunch of us that are just... We got no rules. Why did they let that kid play? Tell us all. Here's what the reason. Then we'll all go get pros. We'll go find them.
Now, I have a ton of respect for John Calipari as a coach. And I didn't, when I grew up in Indiana and was an Indiana fan, I hated Kentucky. And when he was at Kentucky, I hated Kentucky. But I had to respect his ability. He has something in common with Curt Cignetti. You can sit there and roll your eyes at how or the method or the decision-making of how they got players. But players get better under them. Fernando Mendoza got better this year at Indiana. Elijah Surratt got better playing for Curt Cignetti. And in John Calipari's case, for years at Kentucky, you had Worldwide West and the Nike connection and all that, and everybody knew there was probably some weird stuff going on. But now that everybody can do it, and I'm not saying he makes bad points. He does a remarkable job of meshing personalities and growing players. There's no doubt about it. But the method in which those players are acquired, everybody else is now doing what Calipari probably has been doing forever. So now there's a problem, right? Because everybody else can do it. Now, another coach that is well known in the world of basketball, not necessarily as a coach, but as a player, Bobby Hurley's one of the great college basketball players of all time. Hit some big shots against Indiana that 92 Final Four. Gutsy player, gritty player. We know what happened. He got into the NBA. He got into a terrible car accident and, kind of was never the same. But he has been coaching for a while. His brother is probably the best coach in college basketball, at least in this current era. And Bobby Hurley's at Arizona State. Bobby Hurley, not related to this, at least not overtly related to all of what we're talking about. But he had the following to say after the Sun Devils' recent game. I think this was last night.
We got punked down the stretch, couldn't get key rebounds, just where we needed to we made them miss somewhere and we just couldn't come up with a rebound. It's been a consistent theme throughout. Hats off to them. I mean, the shot they made on the right wing from 30 feet as the shot clock was expiring, there's things like that happening which bring the word like doomed into my mind. Like that's the word when I see a shot like that go in, like doomed, right? That's kind of like, we have not played well here in years, like since before COVID. Like we had this place cooking before COVID. Now it's a sterile environment. We don't win here. We don't give our fans any reason to show up with enthusiasm to think that we're going to win a basketball game. And we have been dreadful at home for years. Even the year, I mean, I'd have to look at the exact record. The last time we did go to the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago, I don't think we were great here.
Okay, so that's Bobby Hurley. And what does that sound like? Now, that sounds like a guy, sure, that maybe he's trying to motivate his team. The Sun Devils are terrible. They've lost 3 in a row. I think they're 1-5 in conference play. They were a bubble team a couple years ago. Right now they sit at 10-9. They're 13th in the Big 12. That's a coach that is basically saying, it's over. I want out. Stop the planet. I want off. That's basically what Bobby Hurley is saying right there. And yes, part of that is probably a frustration because of the way Arizona State is playing. But I think it's probably also a frustration in the way that they are having to be assembled and the status and the state of the game today. It would be very difficult, I would assume. It would be very difficult to prepare year in and year out for teams because you can't watch film from last year. It's an all-new roster. You got to watch film from games this year. I get it. You got to work a little harder. I get it. But there's no coincidence. When Tony Bennett stepped down at Virginia, that should have been the warning whistle to everybody. When Jay Wright stepped down at Villanova, that should have been the warning whistle to everybody. In football, it's a little bit different because football can sustain the greed overtaking it and the fact that you're watching basically mercenaries, because in football, a lot of those guys, they're wearing helmets and pads and you don't recognize them. In basketball, you anticipate and expect and you want to know the roster. You want familiarity from one year to the next. You want to see a team being built because to change 2 guys is to change 40% of the lineup. And so when you get mercenary aspect of it in basketball, that feels to people more personal. And I think that there is more of a backlash from fan and coach and everything else in the way it's happening in basketball versus football. And it feels like fan interest as well, a la Bobby Hurley talking there. Not that Arizona State was ever a hotbed for college basketball, but when you hear him talking about just, there's no atmosphere, it's sterile, I think you're seeing that more and more. Indiana's played games this year in front of 10,000 people. It's crazy. I never thought I'd see that. But college basketball, I think, all this wind of change is kind of hurting college basketball more than football. But speaking of wind of change, I think that's happening from a meteorological standpoint. It is Death Storm Snow Orgy 2026 coming up, I believe.
So we've got a OnlyFans reference. We now have a Death Storm Orgy. Is that what you just called it?
Well, there's OnlyFans lights in here. Not that I know these things. I'm just saying that's what I'm told they look like.
No, that's a studio lighting thing.
I'm sure. Okay, studio lighting. Speaking of that, I see this guy in a studio once a week. Always pleasant, always does a fabulous job. And I did want to have, kidding aside and flippancy aside, somebody on to let us know, especially with the stuff going on in Bloomington outside and the weekend. Everybody's in a frenzy. Sean Ash from WTHR Channel 13, noted John Calipari disliker because he's a Louisville fan, joining us on the show. Hi, Sean. How are you?
No doubt, my friend. Hey, White Death 2026 coming at us, friend.
Okay, there we go. That's what I'm calling it. White Death 2026. Okay. All right. So what do we got upcoming, and when is it going to happen?
All right. So let's talk specifically first about the celebration in Bloomington Saturday. If you're heading down to that, I would plan to dress for wind chills about 5 below. So it's going to be a chilly one. Now, whether or not we have snow, during the celebration, I'm a little more uncertain on that. However, if it was, a little light burst of snow, the roads could get slick quickly. I was just conferring with my teammate here, Rob Ellis. We think the teeth of the storm will be Saturday night and then during the day on Sunday.
Okay.
Right now, we're thinking between 6 and 10 around the metro area. You get down to Bloomington, you get down to Columbus, and then southward toward the Ohio River. That may be a solid 10 inches more. So Sunday traveling, in my opinion, is going to, and listen, I always tell people, you got to make your own choices. But the roads are going to be slick because it's such a doggone cold setup. That's the problem. And heck, even if we only got 2 or 3 inches of snowfall, that would be enough to make the roads pretty slow. Winter storm watch now will eventually become a winter storm warning. And snow will end by probably 10, 11 o'clock Sunday night. And then we're going to stay pretty cold much of next week. But, yeah, this has some teeth. I did look back because, there's a lot of big numbers thrown around. In the city of Indianapolis on record, we have had 8 one-day snows of 10 inches or more. The last one was actually back in March of 2018. So we don't get them a lot, but not going to completely rule it out. Either way, again, I would plan for a pretty snowy Sunday. The big, for us right now, kind of the most uncertain part is whether or not we get a little first wave of snow the middle part of Saturday. It's a possibility. We're just not putting a lot of stock into it just yet.
So for folks that from the Indy area, or for that matter, Columbia, whatever it may be, if you are from around the state and you're heading down to Bloomington Saturday for the 1 o'clock celebration, probably the key, Sean, would be it would be wise to not plan on staying the night in Bloomington and rather come back and try to be home before Sunday. Safe to say?
Yeah, unless you want to drive through snow roads. I mean, I think that's a good point. Yeah, if you don't mind it, and some people don't, you don't mind white knuckle conditions. Yeah, but Sunday is going to be a very snowy day. Heavy at times, certainly.
I'm almost embarrassed to ask this, Sean. Sean Ash is our guest from WTHR. And I know that stuns you to think that I'm going to ask a dumb question here, right? Sometimes when you get a bunch of snow, it's that like kind of wet snow that's easier to shovel, but it's heavy as heck, you know what I mean? But it doesn't blow around as much. Then you get the times where the challenge becomes, you go out, it's like being in a snow globe. You can't see anything because it's just flying all over the place. Do we have any idea what like things would look like, say, Sunday or Monday as kind of the aftermath?
I'm more of a powdery. I think it's going to be more of a powdery kind of snow. Exception might be the farther south you go. A little maybe Bloomington, maybe a little bit farther south, might be more of a heavier, wetter snow. But for a lot of us, this thing's going to be falling. Temperatures are going to be in the low teens for much of the snow. So it's going to be more of a colder, drier snow, if you will. But I think the metro, a lot of folks, by the time we get into Monday morning, I think, at minimum, a lot of people should have about 6 inches, if not more.
Sean, I know we have a lot of people that listen on like the app and, through streaming, or because we have so many different ways that people can listen. In the southern part of Indiana, so you're talking like the border of like Indiana and Kentucky, is there a possibility of ice in the southern part of the state, or are they just talking snow down there too?
I don't think it can completely get ruled out. And here's the tricky part. There's a real fine line where it's called the sleet line, and just north of that sleet line is where that's where the snow sweet spot will be, just north of that line. Does the sleet make it up to Louisville? Does it get across the river? Yeah, I don't want to completely rule it out. Right now, I'm hedging more toward it doesn't. And Louisville, Cincy, southern counties, or the southern counties of Indiana, just get pasted with a foot or more. That's the way it looks right now. Now, keep in mind, my friends, we're 48 hours away So, this is kind of this is our initial snow call, and then you just have to watch. You got to watch this thing. Does it continue to trend north, or does it trend a little bit to the south? Those are all options as well. So this is kind of the initial starting point for us, and then we will be looking at data between now and by the time the first flakes fly there on Saturday, and make adjustments as needed.
When will we get any sort of a reprieve? So basically, Sean Ash, WTHR, is our guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Sean, I've always said I don't mind snow so much. What drives me nuts is bitter cold temperatures or lack of sunshine. Will we get reprieve on? It's sunny out today, right? So that's cool. I can deal with that. But is this going to? Are we getting ready? Like, in other words, are we all moving to Russia? Are we getting ready for like 10 days of being Siberian? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah. So here's the thing: when you get a deep snowpack, especially a fresh one, it gets pretty cold. We're going to have some nights next week, providing this forecast plays out. We'll have some nights next week with the air temperature well below zero. Might have a couple of days where we're not out of the single digits. So now we might have a few sunny days there for you, Jake.
I'll take that. But the polar vortex, it's kind of weird. You kind of get used to. I mean, you don't get used to it, but you kind of get used to it. Does that make sense when it's super cold?
Well, listen, you and I kind of grew up in the same time, man. But those winters of the 70s and 80s were awesome for kids. Those are what I remember. So that's, hey, it's January. We should. If you don't have spring fever now, though, I guarantee you'll have it after this.
Did we have more snow when we were kids, Sean, or do we just remember it that way because we took advantage of it?
Yeah, maybe maybe we had true snow days, and that's why we remembered it. I grew up in Louisville. I can't tell you how many times I woke up with a surprise. Like, my dad's like, hey, go back to bed, look out the window, and it's like, 5 inches of snow on the ground. And maybe that's what it was. But yeah, I mean, you think about 78 was a brutal one here. 85 was also a pretty nasty one. And those up until, 2013, 2014, that's actually our snowiest winter on record in the metro. We were up, I think we got up to about 55 inches that winter. So we had a fast start. We slowed down, and now we're ramping back up.
Sunday, by the way, is the 48-year anniversary of the blizzard of 78.
The blizzard of 78, which for just about the entire state, that remains the benchmark winter storm.
Totally. All right, lastly, I got to ask you this before we let you go, Sean. Pat Kelsey, the coach at Louisville, I know you grew up in Louisville and you're a U of L fan. Good coach or just goofy? Which is it?
No, man. I think he's pretty sharp. But you can be both too, though, right?
You know what? He's kind of, to be honest with you, I look at him a little bit like Kurt Signetti, and the fact that when he took the job, people were like, man, this dude's saying some crazy stuff, but he kind of had to, right? Like, he kind of had to kind of sell it and and build it back up. And I've always kind of liked Louisville basketball. I like the guy. I just was curious what the Louisville thought is.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had historically probably two of the statistically worst seasons you could have in Division I basketball. And so I think he understood that he needed to kind of galvanize the fan base. Of course, you can talk the game, and then you got to apply it. He does some pretty cool things. If you're watching, out of bounds or after timeout plays, he runs some good sets. I mean, they launched the three, and when they're hitting it, they can spread a lead out quickly. When they're not hitting the three, sometimes they have difficulty, I believe, coming up with a second scoring option. So it can make it frustrating at times.
Well, Sean,
it's certainly better than the latter, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, I keep wedging myself in there on Monday afternoons at WTHR.
Yeah,
I just hang around the back, and then eventually they bring me in there. So I don't know if I'll see you Monday or not, but I appreciate you coming on the program.
Well, we appreciate you, brother. You're welcome anytime, man.
Appreciate it. Sean Ash joining us from WTHR Channel 13. They will have all of your coverage. By the way, speaking of coverage, this is very cool. Eddie, do you happen to have the breaking news sounder? Tonight, if you missed it, if you did not listen to the historic calls of Don Fisher, which literally is like the perfect backdrop for you, 7 o'clock tonight, we will replay the Indiana-Miami National Championship game. We will do the same on Sunday at 1 p.m. Right here on this radio station, you will be able to hear replays of the championship game, Indiana defeating Miami. IU Indy, a big win last night, a big win, and they're starting to turn the corner a little bit here. New coach, new system, but familiar voice that calls their games. Jimmy Cook joins us next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You know, the IU Indy Jags, certainly the year has not been to the expectation of what they would have liked, at least to this point. But whenever you have a new coach, new roster, and bringing in a number of players from previous top, you saw it work with Curt Cignetti, with James Madison. I think it takes a while to really grasp and understand, especially from an athletic standpoint, new league, new players you're facing. But the Jags have won 2 of 3 here and have ticked it up a little bit, including winning at Oakland, 103-85. That was their most recent win. And then Robert Morris that they got 2 games ago. They dropped one in a tight game to Detroit in between the two. But the voice of the Jags is certainly a familiar one on this program, and we figured out that he has plenty of time to come back and join us on the show because he does not have any Kansas City Chiefs gear to sift through to get ready for the playoffs. So Jimmy Cook joins us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Brother, how are you?
I am doing wonderful, Jake. It's great to hear your voice, great to hear Eddie's voice, and props to whichever one of you had a welcome back Cotter on the rejoiner. That's good stuff. Good stuff all around. I'm doing good. How are you?
I am well, thanks. Obviously it's been a little bit different over the last year or so, but I was thrilled to see that you're doing, because I know how much, for those that don't know, and I have said this 1,000 times, but I'll make it 1,001. Jimmy obviously was a part of this radio show and was doing it for a while, and then at no fault of Jimmy's, and I remember at the time saying, at the time that Jimmy left here, they made some changes within the radio station itself, strictly budgetary, from a budgetary sense. And so at that time, I wanted to make sure that people understood that it was nothing more than that. And I know how much you wanted to do play-by-play, and then the opportunity opened up for IU Indy, and here you are. So let's begin with that. From, you've been doing Roncalli forever, and now getting the chance to do Division I. Was there an adjustment for you? What's it been like for you to get to know this roster and doing these games?
The biggest adjustment, I'd say, Jake, would be the ability to interact with players more. Like at the high school level, I always kind of distanced myself from player personnel just because you're talking about like 13 to 17-year-olds and it'd be more interactive with the coaching staff. So the opportunity to have more access and be able to have conversations and build relationships on the road with not just the coaches, but the team has been the biggest difference. Not that that's been a challenge. It's just been, an additional kind of cool thing that we get to do. The biggest challenge, and I cautioned how I wanted to phrase this with you because I want to make it clear it's apples and oranges still to be certain. The pace at which Ben Howlett's Jaguars play, and it was the same thing when he was the head coach at West Liberty for, numerous years and all the success that he had there. The only thing I can liken it to, like I've joked with people when the season's done, I don't know if I need to go to Hoosier Park or if I need to go to the Speedway or just sit with you for like 3 weeks. But the closest thing I can think of for the pace is trying to call a race or something at the track, or the Speedway. There's nothing like it that I've ever seen or experienced. That was the biggest adjustment for me. Like, you know me pretty well. I'm a fast talker. Even with how fast and how much I love high energy stuff, that was the biggest adjustment, with just knowing how quick this team moves and how much action you want to cram into each detail of the radio broadcast.
Well, so let me throw this at you, Jimmy, and tell me if this makes sense what I'm about to say. If you look at the Jags roster and Ben Howlett, and like you said, their system is basically come down, try to get shots before the defense is set up, and then, basically get more field goal attempts per game than opponent and just furious pace, right? And that worked, and he brought, Kyler DiAgostino is a guy that he brought over with him, if I'm not mistaken, and other players. So I think the implementation of the same system, he did the right thing in bringing guys from previous stop along with him. And I think it's important for potential future players to see that system. But the athleticism to be able to run that system at the D1 Horizon League level was just slightly off with the players he brought over. And so you're still running the same system. You're still letting people see what it is. It just doesn't mean that for right now you're doing it perhaps even with the efficiency of pace that you would like from an athletic standpoint. Is that way too nuanced an observation?
No, it's definitely not. The only thing I would maybe slightly add or adjust with that is it took time, and I think more time than maybe the staff and personnel thought initially to get up to D1 speed. But now I feel like they're rounding into that form. Whereas had you asked me a month ago, I would tell you, maybe some of the players that came over from the Division II ranks. You mentioned DiAgostino, Finn Woodward, another one of their bigs, that maybe they were still adjusting and having growing pains to D1. But now here we are 3 or 4 weeks later, and you can see everybody, regardless if you were a Division I transfer that is playing in the system for the first time, or you're one of the 4 West Liberty transfers that know the system at the D2 level, everybody's kind of rounding that corner. But yeah, the best way I explain it, and this is just from my observation, I'm sure Coach Hallett would tell you a far more in-depth explanation on it. It's everything you described, but if you remember the VCU teams of the 2010s with Shaka Smart, the way they press, times that by 10, and that's what this team does in terms of for 40 minutes. They make a shot, and right before it's even through the net, they're already in their press set, trapping you constantly, forcing you into tough spots, and then running in transition and out-shooting their opponents, and not just chucking up stuff from the parking lot, taking high-volume, high-efficient shooting, which you finally saw last night. I mean, they lead the country in shots per game. They get up 75 against Oakland, and they hit it at a 60% clip. Now, that type of mark, not sustainable, but that's more what you're used to from Ben Howlett teams is high-efficient shooting nights on high-volume attempts.
Has it been simply a process, Jimmy? Jimmy Cook is the guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. It kind of feels weird to say your guest, right? I mean, it's like when your brother comes over to the house and you're like, he's a guest of the house. Well, not really, but nonetheless.
I think I still have a company title somewhere.
You're
sure there's something.
Well, you're
still
you're the president emeritus of Query and Company. I mean, you know
right,
what I mean?
right.
That carries a little clout there. Has it been a matter of getting everyone to just kind of learn the system? Is that why this has taken a while? Because it does look like they are a different team than they were, say, 6 weeks ago. And some of those guys are familiar, I realize, but is it an elaborate system that takes a while to figure out for players?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a certain level of growth and understanding that I think had to be rushed and put to a 200 mile per hour speed when you're taking a job in June, right? You don't have a full-scale recruiting cycle to go through, a full-scale transfer portal cycle to get through to try to piece together a roster. And so you have to do it instead at, breakneck speed because that's just how fast things are moving. And that's why it was so important to have West Liberty players that understand it to help not necessarily be player coaches, but explain to guys, oh no, this isn't just a 5-minute thing. This is a full 40-minute expectation. And it also takes a lot of, and Jake, I mean, I'm not the best at this in general, but it takes a lot of sacrifice to be able to play in this system. Like just because you're a starter doesn't mean what it would say at Oakland or say at, Robert Morris or Indiana or Michigan State, wherever. It doesn't mean the same thing in a Coach Hallett system, because they're constantly platoon swapping guys. And just because you might be off the bench doesn't mean you might not be playing 35 minutes a night if you're excelling and if you're doing well. And so it takes a level of sacrifice and willingness to say, I'm going to put the team above myself and give my all to this process. And I think that combined with learning where you need to be in all the different sets they operate with has taken some time. But as you've mentioned, they've won 2 of the last 3. I think everybody would tell you probably should be 3 in a row now. They had their worst shooting night of the season, their second worst shooting night of the season, and that loss to Detroit in between the 2 victories. They just hit 2 more threes there. They're on a 3-game winning streak and really feeling good about themselves. But now you're winners of 2 of your last 3. 5 of your final 9 games are going to be at home. You're only 2 back on the loss side of 10th place Youngstown State. That's significant because if you leapfrog them, you're hosting the first-round game of the Horizon League tournament here in a couple of weeks, and that would be big to get the home crowd back in the jungle behind this team. So to answer your question kind of long-winded way, there are complications to it of needing time to develop and learn it that were impacted by the short turnaround time from job acceptance to now. but I think you're finally starting to see the fruits of that labor over the last 3 weeks or so.
Jimmy, with IU Indy making the changes as you made, they typically go 5 in, 5 out. I know you don't really watch hockey, so to kind of explain it to you, in hockey they have these different lines, which are different lineups. So like there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you're doing this for IU Indy on the radio, are you saying the second line is in for the Jags, or how are you doing this?
A shift change, right?
Yeah,
a line change.
Yeah. Yes, that's platoon swap, shift change. Those are the kind of phrases I'm throwing out there, Eddie. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, if you're in the hockey lexicon, that's a lot like what they like to do. They're constantly throwing in bodies. They'll make changes if Coach Hallett sees something not being run the right way. He's not afraid to make a quick change. Somebody might have been on the bench for 5 seconds. All of a sudden, they're back in because someone's not running things the right way. But it's all about accountability and collectiveness of accepting, and you see this in their film sessions, accepting where errors are made, learning from them, and then not making the same mistake again. But yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's a platoon swap. It's a line change. That's what you're seeing from the Jaguars.
Jimmy, when you were a student at IU, how many football games did they win, and how many did you attend?
I don't have a number on the win total, which kind of answers the second half of that as well, Jake. My class was still amongst those where, and obviously this isn't the case now in the Schenectady area, football tickets were hey, please take these because you have to take them in order to go to basketball games. I would put, as embarrassed now as I am to say this, I would probably put it at
when were you there? I can answer it for you.
Under 20 games. I was there in the during the Kevin Wilson era primarily.
Jimmy, listen, I looked this up last night. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
Prior to I believe this is correct, prior to their Rose Bowl appearance in 1967, which was forever ago, I get that, right? Prior to that, there would have only been like 2 classes at Indiana University that would have seen 16 wins in their 4 years. They won 16 games this year, right? Now, once Mallory got there, then you had a lot of years where there were 8, they'd win 8, 6, and 4, that kind of thing. But, okay, so what years did you say, Jimmy?
Yeah, so it would have been 2013 to winter of 2017. So primarily the Kevin Wilson era was while I was there.
Okay, so we'll go 13, 14, 15, 16. Eddie, what's the total number there?
14, 15, 16, that would have been 16 total wins.
16 total in the 4 years he was there?
And if you include 13, then it's 21.
Okay, so you saw 21 wins in your 4 years. Okay, now look up mine, Eddie, which would be a little bit better, I think, but mine would be 93 season, 94 season, 95 season.
16.
Total?
Yes.
Okay, and they won 16 this year. Your overall thoughts, Jimmy, on IU winning it?
I mean, for the Cook house, I'll give a shout out to my wife, Haley, because she's a day one IU football fan, has been since she was a little kid. And that's always been her biggest passion in sports outside of women's soccer. So for us as a whole, I mean, incredible to see it. Like, Jake, you've retweeted a ton of it. And by the way, a shout out to your Why Not Indiana campaign. I was really glad to see that, T-shirts out and everything.
By the way, Jimmy, do you have the breaking news sounder, Eddie? I was thrilled by this, by the way. There was a sports merchandising company that was making Why Not Indiana sweatshirts and T-shirts that were not part of my trademark. And once I brought it to their attention, they could not have been better about it. And that includes those that are sold at the airport and as well Rally House, where John's going to be tomorrow. That is now within the umbrella. So yes, thank you for mentioning
that. That's awesome. No, of course, yeah, no problem. I'm sure you were, and it was very cool to see from afar. So look, I've been fully transparent with you guys throughout the entirety I've known you. I am beyond ecstatic for my alma mater, for IU football. Kurt Cignetti delivered on every single promise that he said he was going to do, from the I win Google me moment to going on the Big Ten championship stage the year prior to that run, not this year's run, but last year's run, and saying we're going to be back here and we're going to play here, like we expect to win here, and he did everything. And it is the quintessential American sports story. I feel like it's one of the best Cinderella, even though they won't categorize themselves as that because they were a 1 seed, but it's up there with any astronomical run that you're going to find in sports. But I will tell you, I can only claim it as an alum My wife can claim it as a diehard fan. She's been there from the very beginning. Jake, I know that you have an affinity for IU football, as does Eddie. I can't sit here and claim and say that, I was behind them in the trenches every step of the way. But I'm a proud alum, like many that have gone through Bloomington, that have been to Memorial Stadium and have seen them on this run.
I have a T-shirt of me with 4 buddies in Red River Gorge in 1997 after a 13-mile hike through the Daniel Boone National Forest, and I'm wearing an Indiana football T-shirt. I'm like, man, if I could just find that picture as proof, right? So I can prove it. Like, hey, no, right. I was in. Lastly, did the Indiana football run allow you to do family chili dinners since you have no Chiefs games by which to do that?
No, not as much. But we did get to, have our usual season end stuff. I appreciate that. Shout out to my brother Bob, the Chili and Chiefs and everything there. So no, definitely more quiet than usual in the January to February, but different family gatherings, stuff spent with my wife's family and getting to enjoy the entire Indiana Hoosiers run to the undefeated season and a national title. But no, Jake, it's been a layer and a ray of sunshine with the Chiefs not being there for me this year.
In conclusion, for Jimmy Cook, since he was the brain child behind all of this, do you have the tinfoil hat theory music, if you could, please, Eddie? This was originally Jimmy's thing anyway. The tinfoil hat. There we go. Someone asked Grok, which is the AI arm of Elon Musk. Someone asked Grok, please put a photo of Josh Allen in the uniform of the team with which he will win a Super Bowl. And it came back with Josh Allen in a Kansas City Chiefs uniform. There you go.
I did see that. And I think some of my favorite comments on that front were every team needs a backup QB, Jake. So maybe there's room for him there.
That may well be it. But you know what? Hey, Gardner Minshew was there, I think. Didn't they have Carson Wentz for a while as a backup too?
They did have Carson Wentz as well.
Okay,
yep.
So maybe they can get him after the Colts have Josh Allen. Maybe that's what we're looking at here.
Or maybe Daniel Jones is headed to Kansas City in 5 years.
That's exactly right. Who knows? That's exactly right. All right, coming up, I believe it's Sunday, 2:00 out at the Jungle for IU Indy, correct?
Yes, it is. Purdue Fort Wayne comes into town. If you grew up a Pacers fan, if you grew up a fan of fast-paced basketball, and you enjoy an intimate atmosphere the Jungle provides, come out and support the Jags. This is as good of a ticket as you're going to find in town. Like I said, 5 of the final 9 games are at home. They could use your support, and I promise you give Ben Howlett and his team 40 minutes of your time. You're going to be a fan of this team for life because of how fun they are to watch in action. That's Sunday, 2:00 in the Jungle as well against Purdue Fort Wayne.
Appreciate it, Jimmy. And by the way, it is Country Music Day, I believe, on Sunday, and they're giving out foam cowboy hats, which is kind of fun, right?
Yep. So, yeah, absolutely. Grab yours at the Jungle. Thank you guys for having me, and it's great to talk to you both.
Appreciate it. Jimmy Cook joining us on the show. Eddie, we'll let you pick your favorite country music song on the other side, since it's Country Music Day coming up Sunday for the Jags. Tony East going to join us coming up top of the hour.
This is the exclusive radio home of the Indiana Pacers.
WIBC HD2 W298BB, WIBC HD3 W228CX, WFNI, Indianapolis.
Hey there, Jake Query for Chicago's Pizza. One of the things I'm really looking forward to this year. Love working with Chicago's Pizza. I've told you folks before, when we first started doing, ads for Chicago's Pizza, they said, Jake, we want you to come down and meet every single one of our location owners. And I went down, and it was so impressive to me because they just wanted me to see their commitment they have towards their community and making sure they're making great fresh pizza every day for folks. And that's what it's all about. They've become great friends because they're great folks. And in addition to that, they said, you know what? This year, Jake, let's start to recognize and pay tribute to some of your listeners that are doing great things out in the community and get them some pizza in reward. And I said, that sounds fabulous. And I look forward to doing that over the course of the year. But until then, simply to remind you folks about their lunch buffet that takes place every single day from 11 until 1:30, just $13 for a pizza buffet and a salad bar, all the fixings, all the fresh dressings, and a soft drink for just $13. And the family meal deal, $25 for 2 medium one-topping pizzas and a fresh order of breadsticks, which you can do, of course, in terms of a pickup. You could do it delivery, and you could also do it by dining in. Friday night's a perfect pizza night. Saturday night, whatever it might be. And then Sunday, think about when the weather's going to be bad. Why not just get pizzas and stay inside? All of it's awesome. Chicago's Pizza, 18 Central Indiana locations, chicagospizza.com.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
By the way, ESPN has out their much too early predictions for next year's college football playoff slate and champion. They have the number 1 seed as Indiana. They have Notre Dame in along with Oregon, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State, Texas, Ohio State, Hawaii, Georgia. They have Oregon getting their revenge, defeating Indiana in the quarterfinals, and Notre Dame, the national champion, by beating Georgia. You just heard the mention that we will have John Mellencamp tickets to give away. We're going to do that at 2:30. I said yesterday I have the greatest trivia question ever, and everybody answers in the same order in terms of the answers. And it relates to the Super Bowl, which we will find out this weekend who's going to be playing in that. But I'm not here tomorrow. Greg Rayster will be filling in for me, so we will do that bottom of the 2 o'clock hour. But Tony East joins us next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, a couple of news and notes here. First, later on this radio station, instant replay coming up tonight at 6 o'clock. But speaking of instant replays, and I know a lot of people ask me about this, and this is very cool that we're going to do this not once but twice. And that is tonight at 7 o'clock, it will be a replay of the national championship game between Indiana and Miami. Don Fisher's call from beginning to end. Sit back, enjoy yourself Surfside or whatever it is you might enjoy. Get a Chicago's pizza. Say to yourself, I'm just going to tune in and listen to the broadcast and enjoy it again, stress-free this time. If you missed that, no worries. You can listen to it again on Sunday at 1 p.m. right here on this radio station. We will also have coverage live on Saturday of the celebration down in Bloomington that will get underway at Memorial Stadium 1 o'clock, and it's going to be frigid. 5 below wind chills at Memorial Stadium, but I've got a feeling that the 50,000 plus that are there are going to say that is totally fine in order to see that team and lift that trophy and the celebration that comes with all of that. We just ask that you travel safely because, as Sean Ash had said, Saturday evening into Sunday is when it's going to get a little bit tricky outside. And so we'll see what all of that means. Also, Fernando Mendoza tonight, Jimmy Fallon, as I understand it, will be on Jimmy Fallon tonight. So a lot going on in that regard. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. JavaHouse.com is the website. And, you know, you've heard me mention it before. The amazingly smooth Colombian coffee. They have Ethiopian coffee as well. They have Sumatra coffee. They've got teas in a number of varieties, whether you're talking black tea, peach tea, whatever it might be. The Wrangler energy drink and the Liquid Science hydration drink, all of them very easy pods. You peel them off. 8 ounces of water, you pour it in, and instantly beverage. Tony East is a fan of the way that all works, and he joins us now on the guest line. Of course, Forbes, Locked On Pacers, talking about the Pacers, who dropped one last night to the Boston Celtics. Tony, how are you?
I'm happy to be here and not sound like Alvin and his gang of chunks. So that's an exciting update.
You just jinxed yourself. You realize that, right?
I'm sure I did.
Yeah, this is a real test. Sounded like you might have been consuming a beverage as you started out there. By any chance, is it one that was made through the sound of just putting a pod right there into the water?
I do have a coffee in my hand, yes. But it's actually gone. That was the last sip. So
well, we'll get you some more Java House. That's what we need to do, Tony.
It is Java House. So perfect.
Love it. I absolutely love that. Okay, let's begin with this. Kind of the weekly chat, I guess. I think we now know where things stand. We now know where things stand with the Pacers. For those that might have been holding out hope of maybe they'll get things turned around. Maybe they'll get it going in the right direction. Pretty clear where things are headed at this point. Question becomes, I think, how active are they going to be at the trade deadline? Or are they going to wait for sign-in trades end of year? What is your initial or overwhelming gut thought sentiment on that?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned everybody knows what this is. T.J. McConnell had a season with the Sixers where they closed the year 27-5. Very good. The Pacers closed last year very good. If the Pacers right now went on a 27-5 stretch, it'd still be under 500, right? That is the state of affairs that they're in, and I think everybody knows what this is now, right? They're still going to try to learn what they can about the team, especially before the deadline, and truth be told, I think they have to smile at least somewhat that it hasn't been great in terms of the results, but this healthy-ish stretch from New Year's Eve until right now, obviously no Matherin for all of that, they've looked like a capable team. They've had some ugly losses along the way, but leading in the fourth quarter a lot, they won 4 out of 5 against actually good teams and not crappy teams like the schedule helped them do before the Cup. So at least they know that their team can still be good when they're healthy. Hope, or knock on wood, no one's ever healthy in the NBA, but next season. However, with the deadline coming up, they obviously have to be thinking long-term and not about any short-term gain that this year could provide, and they have a tiny bit of financial flexibility. They might look to just use that space to bring in some assets that they could use in a later move. But you nailed what their decision will have to be is they need a center, and they might want to add talent in other ways. Do they do that now, or do they do that in the summer? And it's hard to sign and trade, but it's a possibility for them given their current situation, and they have a lot of movable salaries now with Jackson, Ben Mathurin, Jarris Walker, all these guys that like could, in theory, stick together to fetch something, but what's the value of those guys? What's their value in the summer? So I think a lot of their work now will be, can they get either their center or something else they like now? But if not, laying the ground for what it would take to get that player in the summer if situations change financially for other teams or team flames out in the playoffs and something else becomes available.
Okay, so this happens to me a lot, by the way. Speaking of chipmunks, I had chipmunk cheeks for a long time there that would consistently hit the mute button on my phone when I was talking. That is not what's happening with Tony. Connectivity issue, so we're going to go a different route in getting him back on the line so we can have a little bit clearer conversation. But I agree, the center position still, and I think that we've talked a lot about this, that Jay Huff has shown, and I really like what Jay Huff brings to the table in terms of his activity around the rim, his shot blocking ability. He has done a really good job with that. I think that clearly when they go up against very strong bigs, he can struggle on the low block, both offensively and defensively, just with lack of overall strength. But he's become more of a consistent shooter. The question I would have, Tony, is this, and we discussed this the other day, but I'll bring it up to you. Jay Huff's ability to rim protect and replicate that area of Miles Turner's game. One of the things in losing Miles Turner that you really worried about was the rim protection aspect of it. And you thought to yourself, they've got to go out and get a player that plays that way that Miles Turner does. Does Jay Huff, showing that he can rim protect and be a shot blocker in doses, does that alleviate the necessity of finding that skill set within who it is that you go out to get to be your starting center, and you can use Huff for that purpose, but get a center that does other things, but not necessarily that, in terms of trying to fill the void of Miles Turner? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
I do get what you're saying. Do I sound okay this time?
Yes.
But you know, it's really tricky because Huff had awesome block numbers. I think teams started to figure out what it would take to draw him away from the basket more of late. Like he got stuck on Jaylen Brown on the perimeter last night, for example, and a lot of his block numbers kind of faded. When this happened to Miles Turner, to be clear, at one point in his career, teams realized that he's chasing the block sometimes. Like, just shoot the layup really high. There's going to be an offensive rebound available for your center. I'm not saying Jay Huff's not a rim protector. That's clearly his best defensive skill, but I think that a lot of what he's done is still very good. Like, he's proven that he fits with this team. His shot is at least somewhat real at times. He can defend when he's around the basket, but I don't think he's proven to be more than a reserve level center with some utility to play with the starting five because his skills fit the team very well. But fit is important for the Pacers, right? They need their center to be able to at least make some decisions at the top of the key with screening and how they get out of screens, occasionally passing, right? Being a weapon from there. And so I still think they need someone who can do the defensive stuff and do the things that's required of a Pacer center on top of Huff or whoever else they have at center. And defense is going to be critical for their center spot because it's a weakness of this team when they're at their best is they're just like pretty good on defense, not exceptional. And if they have a weak defensive center, yeah, they can score a lot, but they'll give up a bunch of points. So I do think it's good that they have Huff on the team. His utility is helpful. He fits very well, but I would still think they would like whatever center they acquire to be a pretty good rim deterrent. I mean, that might be one of the most important skills is that they can at least cut off the rim to some extent. If that player is a better perimeter defender than Huff, which is hard to find at the 5, even better.
Give me a center. We'll go with 3, actually, and I know that that's kind of a lot, Tony. Tony East, my guest, Java House Peelanport guest line. Locked On Pacers, Forbes, WTHR, the places where you can see and hear his work. Give me 3 centers that you kind of hear about or you've got your ear to the ground of those that might just be in need of a change, their franchise, their contract, whatever it may be, that could be viable options that Indiana, you would assume Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan have been monitoring.
Yeah, contracts are, I think, the biggest limiting factor for the Pacers because Andrew Nembhard is the 3rd highest paid Pacer this year at $18 million, and Siakam is 2nd at $49 million. So there's a huge gap right there where salary matching becomes more challenging. You have to stack a lot of players as the Pacers to be able to bring somebody in. And so there's a lot of really good players that they could, in theory, try to get, but they might make too much or require the Pacers to really gut their team to get them. And some of them, even their contract goes way up starting next year. Then it becomes even more prohibitive. So there's this range of, I'm making this up, of like clearly good centers who make between 15 and 25 million-ish that it's feasible for the Pacers to get them, and they're pretty good and maybe not so impossible from an asset perspective to get. I think a lot of Pacers fans have landed on the dream being, and this is a player that I have to imagine the Pacers have at least called about, Onyeka Okongwu with the Hawks. He's really talented. He's expanded his range this year. He's a good defender. He started a lot for them because Porzingis has missed a lot of games.
He's a really good rebounder, isn't he?
Yes. He was awesome at that at USC even. He's a great player. He went 6th overall a couple years ago. I don't know why the Hawks would move him, but they're kind of in flux in general. And if they were willing to, change up their center rotation, he'd be a great fit contractually and skill-wise for what the Pacers need. Another one that's gotten a lot of buzz is Daniel Gafford. Ironic because he was also a starting center in the finals that did not have a good finals, but he's a good player for the Mavs. I think his trade value is really interesting. He's been hurt so much this year. He hurt his ankle in the preseason, has never really gotten past it. He keeps banging up the same ankle, but he was good enough to start for a finals run, right? Like that clearly has to be something. His contract is very manageable. There's guys on rookie scale deals that get a lot of buzz. Khalil Ware, Walker Kessler. I've heard some people mention Derek Lively. That seems weird for the Mavs to do that, but he is very good. Rob Williams is in the right contract range with the Blazers, but he, like Gafford, has hurt a lot and isn't as good as a lot of these guys. And there's a bunch of names that in theory could make sense, but there's never like a perfect fit. They're too expensive. They're not quite good enough. There's always something that just like is a little bit of a hurdle for the Pacers, even though there are a lot of guys that do in theory make sense if they can find the right value or trade package.
Jarris Walker. Somebody asked me this question, Tony. I thought it was the best way of saying it. Will the fog ever clear? Does that make sense?
It is a good way of saying it. I mean, I don't want to say it is recently, but it has gotten better, I think. Like it's a little more crystal for him right now. Like he found some way to get through it. But yeah, early in the season, I think the hope was, and I thought he could do it. Like I was generally a Jarris Walker optimist coming into this year, that he could create a little bit more off the dribble than he did last year and shoot as well as he has in his first 2 seasons. And that would be a good enough offensive player. And if that came with any defensive growth, that he'd be a very useful 3 and 4. And instead he made nothing for months. Right. So recently he's done 2 things that have stood out to me. One is the shots are going in. That's obviously very important. His 3-point percentage is just about average now, which average is average, but compared to where it was to start the season is like a massive step forward for him. The other thing he's done recently is, he used to have for November and December, like 1 or 2 plays every game that were just disasters, right? Like terrible turnover, a mess of a defensive rep, stuff like that he shows it. And some of them are obvious, like a turnover, everybody knows it. Sometimes a bad defensive rep is hard to catch, but he shows it. He'll like get mad at himself and clap or look toward the bench or something like that. Like a lot of those are going away too. So he's still an imperfect player, as young players are, working on his defense. He's got to get his foot speed a little higher laterally on the perimeter. He still has turnovers. Every game his shot comes and goes. But I think it's still foggy for him, but I think it is slowing down and clearing up a bit right now, especially if he's kind of had the same role a couple of games in a row. All season he's had to do, at times he was the second option with the bench. Like he's had to go up and down in involvement and in position, and that he didn't handle it well. I'm not saying that to excuse his play, but I think recently knowing where his shots are going to come from and who he's playing with and finally seeing some results, I think that's all led to a confidence build that has cleared some of the fog, but that is the question, will it ever fully go away and he looks like the player that at Houston it looked like he could one day become?
Okay, Tony, we're going to play one of my famous hypotheticals here. You ready?
Let's go. Okay, yes.
We're going to say that you, Tony East, decide, with all, you write involved with Forbes, so you know a little bit about cashola, right? So you've fallen into this windfall of money with your writing and everything, your appearances and everything. So you invest that money into an apartment building, okay, high-end apartment building. And, just like the Jeffersons, we're moving up to the east side. You're going to call your apartment building the east side, right? Just so everybody knows. This is high-end stuff. And you have as tenants Ben Matherin. He's got a really nice unit in your place. Jarris Walker's got a really nice place. So too does Isaiah Jackson, okay? Yep. Somebody calls you and they go, hey, Tony, you got any upcoming vacancies? Because my daughter's looking for a place to live, and we've got a little extra cash. How many apartments are you going to have open up next year? What's your answer?
2 would be my answer. I think that Matherin is a natural one to start at because his contract is expiring. And the Pacers have shown their hand with this, as they should, to be clear, over the years in the past. 2 years ago, they made the conference finals. And mid-season, they traded away a sometime starter for them. Buddy Hield got moved. And granted, there was a lot more to that than just his contract, but they realized they should probably be thinking ahead with that. They took in Doug McDermott in the second. They got worse as a team, but they got an asset for it. The year before that, Miles Turner was going to be an expiring contract that year, and then he extended mid-season. And after the deadline, or close to it, I can't remember when, Rick Carlisle said it. He said, yeah, this deadline might have been different if we hadn't done that with Miles, right? This team, smartly, as every team does, if you have an expiring contract, you think about their future, regardless of how good you are and how good they are. You have to think about it. And Mathurin is an expiring contract, and he's a restricted free agent. They could easily keep him if they want to. But they have to think about, okay, he's going to earn more money on his next deal. What makes sense for them with presumably a big salary draft pick coming in the door next year? What's his role going to be? Is it worth as much money as he'll demand if he's still coming off the bench for them? But also, his potential looks awesome at times. I mean, the first few games of the season were insane. He looked amazing, right? It's going to be a very hard call, but I do think they have to think about what the team would look like without him, even though it might look good with him. They just made the finals with him playing well in the playoffs. Jackson, if he's going to be your backup center or even your third-string center if they acquire somebody else, making $7 million is a big overpay for that role. So he is a good player, or certainly a rotation-level player, but they probably have to think about if that asset makes the most sense for them. Walker's under contract for next year, certainly hasn't popped the way they hoped, but at least they can say they're, investing in him and trying it again for one more year if he's on the team. And he doesn't stink. He played well in the playoffs last year, too, before he got hurt. So I would say that for most, at least likely to still be in their unit in my hypothetically owned apartment building would be Jarris Walker 1, Isaiah Jackson 2, Ben Mathurin 3. But they all have cases to be back and be gone. But I think multiple of those players, if they trade for their center this year, would be in the package for that player because of all those things I just said.
And whichever one of and then you get wind of the fact that one of the guys looking also for an apartment happens to be the Pacers' first-round pick in the 2026 draft. That's going to be pick overall number what?
Oh, that's just an odds guess, right? Like 3 or 4 is just what the odds say is very likely. But if they win a couple more games, that would move it down to 4 or 5. I mean, they obviously could get one. The odds are all the same if you have one of the first 4 records. It's just your floor that goes down. So I'll say 3 or 4.
Okay, fair enough. And that would be a really good player, a really, really good player. Yes, Eddie.
Tony, back when the Pacers were in the lottery, both for Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker, at the time, Jake Query and Jimmy Cook, we were talking, and I remember this conversation with Bobby Marks of ESPN, their front office insider, and he was just stressing the importance of both of those years to get it right, because a team like Indiana, when you don't get a lot of key free agents with big names, it's so important to hit on the lottery. How important is it? And I don't want to make this sound like, yes, the Pacers need to continue to lose, but how important is it for the Pacers to be in the lottery discussion with the top-end talent that is there in this upcoming draft, and not to mention the fact that we're talking right now about potentially trading Jarris Walker and Benedict Mathurin?
Yes, you nailed all the reasons why it's such a big deal. And, at the time, too, the difference between this draft pick, in theory, we'll see how good they are next year, and those two is, they picked Mathurin, they had just won 25 games or whatever it was. When they picked Jarris, they had just won 37. There was no idea of how good this team could be at their peak. And the idea of, in theory, if you nail both of those, like a Halliburton, Mathurin, Walker trio just being amazing, because they hadn't even traded for Pascal yet, was, wow, look what that could be. Like, if you nail it, you have 2 cheap, great contributors for years. Look what this could become. And then along the way, they got Obi and Pascal, and then Aaron Nesmith's contract was cheap and awesome, and Nembhard was cheap and awesome. And they built a team with cheap contributors a different way. But that's really what it's about, is if you're really good, having really good players on undervalued contracts is hard and very important. And that's what the top of the lottery can be, is if that player is good or has a lot of potential to be traded for something good, and they're not being paid very much, it's so huge. It's so huge for your team. I mean, I don't think people realize how much of what the Pacers have been able to do the last couple of years. Is like 2 years ago, they made the conference finals with Nembhard and Nesmith's combined salary being like $12 million. Like, that's insane. That's 2 starters for a top 2 team in the East, right? So that is what the biggest part of it is. The difference now is that it made no sense for them to really trade the 6th or 7th pick when they weren't very good yet. I'm not saying they should trade their pick this year, but if they have a finals contender and they don't get a top 3 or 4 pick, like they could think about it. So there's just a lot for them to consider that they could nail this year. And if they get it wrong, it will hurt tremendously that this year off where they're not playing very well did not net them an awesome player. But the top of this draft looks good, and it's critically important just to get good players when you can. And if they have a chance to do it, they got to nail it.
Not even just critically important for like next year or 2 years from now. I'm talking like 4 years from now when Pascal Siakam's 100%. At the end of that contract extension that he just signed, and you have to find that next player to pair with Tyrese Halliburton for the future.
100%. And you nailed something that I think people, I hope at least, realize when this draft comes is like we're already talking about what could the end of Mathurin or Walker's time with the Pacers look like. 5 years ago, like today, the only Pacer who was on the team that is still now there is TJ McConnell. Now, they weren't very good at the time, but the league turns over so much really fast, like really fast. I think if they could have Tyrese Halliburton forever, they would. But you can't really, you can draft for fit if you're really good, and they are, but you have to think about who's going to be the best player. Who is going to be the best player on your team when they're at their best for you, not who's going to be the best player for you in the first 2 or 3 years of their deal. So there's just a lot of considerations of getting the best player now and for that next era, because a lot of their contracts are lined up for the next 2 or 3 years. But okay, if you get a good rookie, you're going to have them for at least 5, if not up to 8 or 9 before you have to think about their future. So yeah, it's a lot to nail, and it's a lot of your franchise's time that is invested in that player.
Tony East is our guest. Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Tomorrow night for the Pacers, it is back to the spot of the pain. They are in Oklahoma City to take on the Thunder. Tony, appreciate it as always.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad it works better with audio this time.
That's
mostly.
Right. You don't sound like a chipmunk this time. Tony East joining us on the program. All right, Eddie, we have the tickets for John Mellencamp. What are the specifics in terms of this show?
It's a show that will be here in Indiana, Jake.
Okay, and that is when?
In the summertime.
Nothing says summer in Indiana like John Mellencamp, right?
July 18th at Ruoff Music Center.
Okay. I have what I believe. There is a trivia question that I was asked. Actually, I looked this up. I was not asked this. I saw something, and I said to myself, and I looked at something, I noticed something, and I said, that's a great trivia question. It's a fascinating trivia question because I'm not saying that, and I've given it, and several people have gotten it right away. There is a particular order in which every guess, it's very predictable, the answers. I'm not going to give the question now, but we're going to do it live on the air at 239-1070. And whoever gets it correct will be on their way to see John Mellencamp. And we are going to do that on the other side.
Now, what about that second pair we have to give away? We have to give away 2 today. Do we do a text line giveaway for the second pair?
That's fair.
Do we do a trivia question for people who want to text into the show? That way they have their option here?
That's fair. Here's the thing. Others can't see what's being texted in, right?
That is correct.
I will ask the question. The first person to answer it correctly via text will win, and we will also do it on the air.
Okay.
All right. We'll do it on the other side. Hey there, Jake Query for Chicago's Pizza. ChicagosPizza.com is the website. 18 Central Indiana locations, 21 statewide. And not only do they have the family meal deal, $25 for 2 medium, 1-topping pizzas and a fresh order of breadsticks. Perfect for this weekend. Think about that. Weather's not going to be great. Why not just go ahead, whether it be delivery, whether it be dine-in, which is always a great option, or pickup. Chicago's Pizza. And then, of course, the lunch buffet. Think about it for tomorrow. Between 11 and 1:30, just $13, tax out the door. That includes a soft drink and the salad bar with all the fixings from Chicago's Pizza, who are fabulous folks that care about the community and just good people all the way around. But it goes without saying, a story in every slice with that fresh, made right there, fresh dough pizza in-house. Chicago's Pizza. Find a location near you at chicagospizza.com.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
May well be my favorite song from John Mellencamp. Great song. Tickets to give away. We have 2 pair. Here's how we're going to do this. I have a trivia question. Eddie knows the answer. I will ask the question. We will cycle through people on the air. And the first person to text the correct answer also will be a winner. So 2 winners here. Now, here is the question. I will bring on David first, and he will be the first guinea pig of this. David, how are you?
Doing well.
Good. Have you called the program before?
Yes.
Okay. And you're still with us? I appreciate that, right?
Freshly back from Miami, yes.
Oh, how was it?
It was awesome. Had tickets since 91 as a student, so it was a long time coming.
How many of the 3 did you go to between Rose, Peach, and National Title Game?
All 3.
So let me ask you this. If they were to go back next year and do it all over again, would you go to all 3 again, or will you eventually get to the point where you're like, okay, I got to lay out a little bit and then see where things fall?
I'd probably try to do them all 3 again.
It was pretty awesome. I mean, there's no question about that. All right, David, here's my trivia question for you. You ready?
Yep.
Since Super Bowl I to present, and you can't Google, you just got to give me, like, you got to think and then give me your answer. You ready? There are only 2 franchises in the National Football League who have won Super Bowls under the presidential administration of 4 different presidents. The Pittsburgh Steelers would be one. They did it under Ford, Carter, Bush, and Obama. Who is the other franchise?
Oh, boy. I either want to say the Niners or the Patriots. I'm going to go Niners.
Okay, Niners did it under Reagan, Bush, and Clinton, and that is it. Just 3. Mike is up next. Mike, you heard the question. What's your answer?
I'll say the Redskins.
Redskins.
Formerly Redskins. Commanders.
Right. Commanders also. That is also a common guess. That is incorrect. We will go to Todd. Todd, what's up? What's your guess?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and steal the New England Patriot one.
Okay. Also a good guess for the New England Patriots. Incorrect. The guy with the best name, Jake, up next. What's up, Jake?
Hey there, Dallas Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys, Nixon, Carter, Clinton. Stops there. Not the Cowboys. Chad is up next. Chad, what's up?
It's the New York Giants.
You are indeed correct, Chad. You are indeed correct. Reagan, both Bushes, and Obama. Now, did you know that, or did you look it up because you had time?
I guessed.
It's a hell of a guess. I've asked this question.
I looked it up.
You did look it up? Okay, that's okay. I mean, you had that privilege, I guess. Apologies to the other guys. Here's what's fascinating about this question. You mark my words. If you ask anybody, you go into any sports bar and you say, name the two franchises that are the only two to win the Super Bowl in 4 different presidential administrations. Every single time, I could have written this down, every single time, every answer goes in order. Steelers, Cowboys, Niners, Redskins/Commanders, and then typically Raiders gets thrown in there, and Patriots. Every one of those gets mentioned before anybody knows the New York Football Giants. Chad, what's your favorite Mellencamp song?
Oh, man. What's the one that's kind of 50s doo-wop sounding? I don't know.
Wait,
yeah, I don't know.
Chad, hold on. Hang on, Chad. How old a fella are you, Chad?
Hey, I'm 53, so I've been Mellencamp since, day one.
I mean, we're the same age, right, Chad? What high school did you go to?
Yeah. Brownsburg.
You're the class of 91?
90.
Did you happen to know Mike Vanderjagt's ex-wife that went to Brownsburg?
Jalen?
Yeah. She was an attractive girl, right?
Oh, very good-looking woman, yes, sir.
Okay, now, Chad, if you could, let me ask you this as part of our Get to Know Your Listener. If you could pick any team, not who you think, but who you want. If the sports gods came upon you in the middle of the night and they said, Chad, you knew the New York Giants, you got it correct, you couldn't name a Mellencamp song, but that's cool, but we are going to give you the ability to pick any team in any sport, and it will guarantee that they win their next championship. Not the one you think would win, but the one that you most would want to see win, Chad, would be who?
Oh, tough one. The New Orleans Pelicans.
What, you're a fan of the New Orleans Pelicans?
No, I just love the city of New Orleans.
Okay, that's cool.
And I'm a Saints fan from way back in the Aints days, Archie Manning and such. But
so who did you root for when the Saints played the Colts in the Super Bowl?
I stayed home. I had invitations to many parties, and they all laughed and weren't surprised. I stayed home. I rooted the Saints on because the Colts had obviously just won one. And, yeah, I rooted the Saints on, but I stayed home.
Chad, you know what? I can appreciate that, and I'll tell you why. And Eddie will get your information. I appreciate you listening to the show. Listen, that makes total sense to me, and I've gone on this diatribe many a time before. But people don't grasp that if you are my age, as Chad clearly is, we're both 53, we were in the 6th grade before the Colts moved here and played a game. And they were terrible in the beginning. And most people went to the RCA Dome to go see the opposition, to go because it was their chance to see the NFL because we never had that here. And I have a buddy, Tom Savage, that grew up here. Actually, Tom grew up in South Dakota, but then lived here. Tom's a diehard Saints fan. And I'm like, Tom, how did you become a Saints fan? Tom's maybe 2 years older than I am. And he said, when I was a kid, I was watching, football on when you'd watch the game on Sunday, the NFL Today, with Irv Cross and Brent Musburg. When you would watch that, and they'd have the highlights of games from around the league. Now let's get you caught up on what's been going on around the league, and they'd show you the highlights. That was the only time that you saw that, or at halftime of the Monday Night Football game was the only time that you really saw the St. Louis Football Cardinals or the Baltimore Colts because they weren't very good, or the Jets. and you usually had a Bengals, Bears, or Cowboys Steelers game here. Tom became a diehard fan of the New Orleans Saints because in the I think it was probably 78 through 80, somewhere in their season, they were winless, and all of their fans were wearing bags over their head in the crowd because they were too ashamed to admit they were a Saints fan. And Tom was like, that team needs fans. They need people to back them up. So he became a Saints fan. And when the Colts played the Saints in the Super Bowl, I felt so bad for Tom because he lived here in Indy, and he was so elated. And there was literally no one to celebrate it with because everywhere he went, it was despair and doom because the Saints had won it and the Colts did not. And I totally understand why people have turned their allegiance over to the Colts that are my age because they've been here now forever and they've had great moments and great teams. But I can appreciate and respect that you stay kind of true to the team that you grew up rooting for. I grew up a diehard Steelers fan. Now, I've lost that fandom over the years. A little like tweak of me of nostalgia when I see their helmet. I'm like, man, it reminds me of the pajamas and the helmet and the trash can, everything I had until, all through elementary school. But I can get it. I appreciate that, and I can give some love there. Did we have a correct texter, Eddie?
We did.
And who's that?
We did indeed.
Who was the texter?
Evan Sherrill's father, John Sherrill.
Really?
I believe. Yeah.
And you know what? Evan hooked us up yesterday, right?
Yes, with some Cluster Truck. Use code Big Fan.
Boy, I'll tell you what, Cluster Truck is outstanding.
$5 off when you spend $25.
And you, listen, use the code word FAN, get the $5 off on 25. Cluster Truck, fresh every time. You order it, and boom, it's right there. It's great. I had the quesadilla yesterday, and it was fabulous. We'll come back. John's in the building. We will get the crossover going, brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com, and we'll let you know what he's got cooking for his program. What's that?
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You know, I mentioned, Eddie, off the top, I think in sport, you know, sometimes a team's playing really well and you worry that they're getting it like too, you know, they're just kind of cruising along. And maybe sometimes it's, you know, you hear teams say a lot if they've won 20 straight and the fans are like, you know, it wouldn't bother me if they lose one in the beginning of March just to kind of get it out of the way. You know what I mean? And then there are other times where you feel like you're having a good year and then you lose a game and before you know it, it becomes a 5-game streak and you're like, will we ever win another game?
Yeah.
And sometimes on this show.
Is it like that right now with the Buffalo Sabres? I know they had that incredible winning streak.
They changed GMs, made a GM change, and we're all in on the Sabres, my buddies and I.
Okay. What's the GM change got to do with anything?
Fresh blood, new thoughts.
Okay.
Motivated guys, change the culture.
Okay. Nice way to hit all the buzzwords there.
I'm all in. They're on Hulu. The Sabres are.
Yeah.
I catch all the time. Watch. I got the hat, the whole deal. My buddies and I, me, Byron, and McConnell, we're all in on the Sabres.
Byron without his wallet, yeah.
Yep. But sometimes on this show,
TJ McConnell?
No relation. Scott McConnell, no relation.
Oh, and John Sherrill piped in, no relation to Evan Sherrill.
That's okay. It allowed us to talk about cluster truck.
That's right.
Cool, right?
That's right.
This program, though, admittedly, there are days when we do it, and I think to myself, man, we did a really good show today. You know, like it was just everything flowed. I felt like I didn't have to stop and collect my thoughts. You know, we worked telepathically because at times it can be difficult because we're in different rooms now. And so if you're doing something else, I'm trying to get your attention. You know, so I mean, I wouldn't expect listeners to know that.
I would qualify today as one of those shows, no?
That's what I mean. And then there are other shows where just you're like, man, I mean, I am just literally sitting here treading water and the current is underneath me and like what? And I look at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have how much time left?
What are we talking about?
Correct. That does happen. Today feels like it flew past. This might be the fastest show in feeling that I've ever done. Now,
is it because it feels like Friday for you?
It does feel weird. I mean, listen,
because
never
you're ditching us tomorrow.
I very rarely, and I'll just open disclaimer, I guess. I very rarely take days off, other than like if I'm going to go on a vacation.
Are you having a spa day tomorrow, Jake?
It's going to be brutal out, I think. But we were given, and I appreciate the company doing so. The company gave us like 2 extra personal days, but they had to be used. There was a deadline for them, and the deadline was coming, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to lose these days if I don't take them. So knowing that, you know, a lot of the big storylines, and we're heading into the Super Bowl next week, so that'll be fun. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a day. So I'm literally doing tomorrow like an errand day. It's probably the best way to say it, but I'll be off tomorrow. However, a couple of house cleaning items. Tonight, 7 o'clock, replay, Indiana-Miami National Championship game, the Don Fisher broadcast on this program. Tonight, 7 o'clock. Same thing for Sunday at 1 p.m. We will replay Sunday at 1 o'clock again, the National Championship game. Also on Saturday at 1 p.m., we will have live coverage of Indiana's victory celebration. In addition, I think I'm okay saying this now. My trademark of Why Not Indiana, there are sweatshirts being sold at the airport and also at different locations around town. There are sweatshirts that have kind of the outline of the state of Indiana that say, Why Not Indiana? And I did go through a lot of time, I'll say that more than anything else, a little bit of money, but more so time, painstakingly longer process than you think to get trademark rights of the phrase, Why Not Indiana? It was not an easy thing to do. And obviously, the shop sold T-shirts for the Pacers and for IU. And at any rate, there are other places now, and I'm happy to report that those also, they have been very respectful. They were not aware of the trademark, and they've been respectful for it. And I'm happy to say now that partnership there as well. So you're good to go wherever you see those items. Eddie, what are you going to do tomorrow without me in here, by the way?
Celebrate.
Okay. You going to play some Kool in the Gang, are you?
I played Kool in the Gang yesterday. I don't know. I'm not sure what Greg Rakestraw's musical taste is.
That's a really good question. I think Rakestraw is.
I know he likes the Digital Underground.
Does he?
He does.
I would think of Rakestraw as being a late 90s kind of guy because that's, he's just a few years behind me. Maybe like Hootie and the Blowfish and then into like Sublime, that era. Third Eye Blind's pretty underrated from that era. J&V's arrived. I saw you skulking the parking lot again today, John.
That dude's kind of cockeyed again today. Is he with Buckingham right there?
I think so.
I'm
yes.
serious. It's going to come to a head because I'm not taking this crap. Seriously. I mean, we have to park in the right spot. So, we're all adhering to the rules. So this clown has to adhere to the rules, too.
There's a handful of people not adhering to the rules out there.
Well, somebody's going to face the consequences because I'm just going to whip somebody's ass in the parking lot. That's what's going to happen. So, yeah.
So just so everybody knows, we mentioned this before, but the parking lot has very narrow spots. And it has probably 80% of the spots that it should have. And I can overlook the parking lot. And I watched today J.B. get out of his car.
Oh, I did. I stared right at that white Cadillac out there
for like 5 minutes.
And I've seen the guy come out there before. He smokes like 9 heaters behind it.
How soon until J&V posts a picture of the license plate or says the license plate on the air?
Well, I'm just going to wait out there for him. I'm just going to address it. I said we're going to have to abide here, very much like the Big Lebowski. We can abide.
Is he over
I
the
abide,
lines
you
today?
Abide.
Is he over the lines again?
Yeah,
today?
he's just kind of cockeyed in there. You can tell. You can tell he's been told not to do it, but he's kind of half-assedly doing it.
Right. He also, and I get this. I do this a lot. I used to do it sometimes in our old garage, and I'll do it at the airport from time to time. And I do it at Pacer games, actually, for a quicker exit. But when you're going to be somewhere at work all day for like 9 hours or whatever, the back end of spot guy's a little much, too.
It's
right?
pretty douchey. The back end is incredibly
I'll
douchey.
seek myself out then.
Seriously. And listen, I own there's no greater douchebag in this building than me right now, Eddie, honestly. But, yeah, the back end is quite often known as stratospherically douche.
John, what's on the big program today?
We have a loaded show. Babe Laufenberg, former IU quarterback, is going to visit too. He was, of course, in South Florida. Steve Walsh, the former Hurricanes quarterback. Tom Crean, former IU coach, will go over, what he knew that IU football program, and then obviously a great deal of college basketball with Tom, and then Mike Chappell talking about the Colts, where everything is okay. Very Kevin Bacon Animal House. Remain calm, all is well.
That's right.
Just because these other teams that have greater goals and obviously results that are greater make changes, you don't have to because everything's okay.
Like I said, there's proactive and reactive.
What are you up to?
6'4". What do you think of the shirt?
I wish I was 6'4".
What do you think of the
I'm
shirt?
so squatty. It pisses me off to be squatty.
Yay or nay on the shirt here?
No, I think that's cool. You look like that's Steve Largen's helmet right there.
Correct. Tomorrow, I'm taking a personal day. Just
what? Personal day on a Friday?
Just running errands.
Rakestraw in for you?
Yeah. Shannon has
Rakestraw's
Fridays.
great.
Shannon only works 4 days a week, so I'm like, you know what? Let's just take a. We were going to go to the Children's Museum, and then I saw the price of tickets to the Children's Museum, and I'm like, yeah, maybe we'll go to a movie.
So High Noon is the double shot power now on the JMV Takeover Saturday night.
Really?
Yeah, High Noon. Does Shannon drink High Noon?
Yeah.
Yeah. High Noon's become really popular. So High Noon has stepped in, and they're a part of the show now every Saturday night. Have you had High Noon?
I have. I prefer Surfside, of course.
The sweet, yeah, I know. The sweet stuff. Sorry about that, Ryan, by the way, too. Didn't bring that up. Ryan's saying, I understand because just kind of crossover right here, but still.
No, of course, we both are excellent, right? We're appreciative of both.
Shout out to Ryan's a dude, man. Let me tell you.
Dude.
Yeah.
Great
Are they
dude.
coming back? Surfside?
Yeah.
Coming back? Yeah.
Yep.
They should. So I see him all the time in the Kroger down in Bargersville.
Ryan or the Surfside?
Ryan and Surfside for that
cool.
matter.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Love Heating and Air, by the way. Love-HVAC.com.
Shout out
is
to
the
Kendra.
website. 317-353-2141, the telephone number for the best. Love Heating and Air. Over 100 years and taking care of John, making sure that His house feels good right now. Same to you. 24-hour on-call
I just leave them in there when I
maintenance.
leave. I just go, hey, guys, just lock up when you leave.
Yeah, you can trust
Make
them,
sure
right?
Zeke is still in the house and we're all good.
It's exactly what you can trust when you get those folks inside your house, and that's what you love. All right, John's up next. We will be back with you. I will be back on Monday. Greg Rakestraw in tomorrow, and I thank you for listening to Query & Company.